Hello, everyone, from the front to the back. We're very happy to welcome you to this event. Okay, translators, I hope, are... There are some translators for people who speak only French. You have to get a headset. How do they get a headset, Hamid? But there are some translation here. So this is an event from the International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism. And we are hosted today for this beautiful lunch from the Embassy of Qatar. Thank you, Ambassador Al-Khalafi. And Middle East Dialogue Center is also standing with us on this event. And I welcome all of you, Belgian dignitaries, Belgian diplomats, experts, police, media. We also have in the room mothers of women that have gone to ISIS. I believe we have someone who went herself and came back, Laura Pisoni. We're going to be showing her video at some point. And we also have Nasser Almari in the room, our new GCC Security Strategies Board leader, which we're very proud of. And as we've already had support from Qatar, we hope all the countries will get behind us on fighting terrorism. And we have Hamid Sabali in the room, I think, unless he's running around. Well, Hamid is here, and he's our director of ICSVE Europe. Here's Hamid. And we've recently opened our center in Europe as well as in Washington, D.C. And we have Dr. Ardian Sheikovsi right here. And Ardian has traveled with me into some very dangerous places, as well as Hamid. And I thank them both for that. So all the research that you hear about today is from all of us and from others that aren't here. And now I'm going to turn it over to Christopher Dickey, the foreign editor of the Daily Beast, a good friend of ICSVE, and someone we just love. So I'm going to let him be in charge.
Well, thank you, Anne. It's great to be here. And I'm still going to refer to you all the time because, Anne, this is really your show. Come on. We all know that. The ICSVE is a fantastic program. I think most of you are familiar with it. Are any of you not familiar with what this program does, with this countering violent extremism? No, I think everybody here, journalists and professionals alike, is well familiar with it. We've got a terrific group of speakers here, and I think there's also a terrific group of people in the room, as Anne was pointing out. But my memory starting to fade with age, I need to get my papers out so I can tell you a little bit more about them. First of all, I think we're going to hear from Gilles de Kerkhove, or do you prefer Kerkhove or Kershove? Kerkhove, who is the European Union Counterterrorism Coordinator, and really a major figure in the fight against terrorism in Europe, where, as we know, there has been quite a lot of it, but also in efforts to find ways to counteract it ideologically, philosophically, economically, through development and other means. Then we're going to have His Excellency Ambassador Abdulrahman bin Mohammed Al Khalifi from Qatar, who has been, I think, almost everywhere in the world. We were talking just before I came up here. He's been ambassador in China, he's been ambassador in France, he's been at the United Nations, he's been in Switzerland, Athens, and here in Brussels, among other places. I think, huh? And Germany, of course. I told him he should go to the G20, and then we thought maybe that wouldn't be a good idea today for various reasons. But we're very glad to have him here and very glad to have Qatar sponsoring this event. They've been tremendously helpful in the whole struggle against violent extremism, and I think that we're all very thankful to that. And you know, of course, she's done a fantastic job. She didn't sing her own praises. Maybe she will a little bit in her address, but she has interviewed hundreds of terrorists. I don't think, I think if you're a terrorist, you feel like you haven't made it until you've been interviewed by Anne. But she has interviewed hundreds of terrorists, Not only ISIS terrorists, but you interviewed black widows too from back in the day. Lots and lots and lots of people telling her why they did what they did. Some of them regretting what they did, and some of them not. And at lots of different ages, men and women, and some children, sadly. And I think there's really nobody around today who knows more about the thinking of terrorists from talking to terrorists than Anne does, who is also a professor of psychiatry at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Then we have Geert Verkouteren. Where are you, Geert? Yes. Who's going to be speaking on the current Belgian security situation and also showing one of the ICSVE videos of a Belgian denouncing ISIS. And Béatrice Beauharmont, who is with the Liège Belgian Federal Police, and who was greatly relieved to see that many people here are Francophone, because she is going to give part or all of her address in French, although we were speaking in English before and she speaks perfectly well. But if she wants to speak in French, of course, Béatrice. And she'll be presenting one of the ICSVE counter-narrative videos, which features a Belgian extremist, and present the results of the ICSVE-run Belgian Facebook campaigns. And then finally, we're going to have Miriam Parra from the Netherlands, the Dutch National Police at The Hague, who's a policy advisor on terrorism, who'll be presenting a PowerPoint on violent extremism in the Netherlands and the results of the ICSVE counter-narrative campaigns in the Netherlands using counter-narratives in policing. And we were speaking before we came in here, and I think that's going to be a very interesting presentation. I don't know if you're going to be focused entirely on women and children, but I think you're going to be talking about that a fair amount. So I think we've got quite a lineup here today, and maybe we should have...
Tell people to go ahead and eat.
No, don't eat. Don't eat. And we want you lean and hungry for this presentation. No, of course, go ahead and eat. Shall we, do you want the presentations, in fact, Anne, do you want the presentations while people are eating? Okay, good. In that case, Mr. Kerkhove, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for your kind words. Thank you very much, Anne, for inviting me. We met recently at an interesting workshop in Kenya. A lot of speakers, so I'll try to be brief and mention three quick points. The first one is, how did I realize that the European Union should invest a lot more in strategic communication? The second is, why is strategic communication even more important today after the collapse of the caliphate? And the third quick point will be why I find the work of ICSVE so important. So first, why did I realize that not only the European Union, but the member states should be more strategic in their communication? Early 2013, and I have to report to the Minister of Interior nearly every month, I was presenting a report on the consequence of the Arab Spring on the internal security in Europe. And at the end of my intervention, I said, by the way, I see something happening which I find quite bizarre, a bit worrying. And it was the number of young Belgian, Dutch, and on going to Syria and Iraq. To be honest, at the time, several member states, I wouldn't say they were in denial, but they had not probably assessed the seriousness of the phenomenon. And I was asked by the ministers to look into the reason why all these young guys were going to the hell, leaving Europe for this crazy story. And I won't go into the detail of the reason, but at the time I think the first wave, some in the first wave might have been driven by some sort of idealistic reason, probably the realization that the West was not supporting the Syrian Spring sufficiently for the first wave, and the very, very first wave. For others, there was more the Shia-Sunni divide, the feeling that the Sunni were under threat by the Shia. For others, probably the bulk, and it revealed to be the main driver, it's the AQ narrative of jihad, which was very attractive in Syria because of the Sham, because that's the place where the Mahdi was supposed to come back, so there was something even more attractive. And for some other, it was just adventure, money, sex, whatever the reason. But looking at the first reason at the very beginning, why was it that people had the idea that Europe, the United States, were not supporting the Syrian Spring enough? At the time, we were already spending a lot of money, especially in humanitarian assistance. So I said to myself, we should make it better known. So I went to see the DG, the Director General for ECHO, which is the humanitarian arm of the European Union in the Commission, a very old friend of mine, and I said, could you be a bit more active, proactive, and tell what we are doing? At the time, I think we had already spent 2 billion euro. He turned in his office and he came with a pile of documents, the sort of document you find in all the building of the Commission, very well designed, very well printed, nice pictures of a little girl in a camp, refugee camp somewhere, and said, but we do communicate. I said, I don't pretend I'm a communicator myself, but it's all the communication. Communication that's Coca-Cola asking Saatchi Saatchi to design a campaign, which means that you know your audience, who you want to talk to, you segment your audience, you design and you craft the message according to the audience that you want to reach, and so on. So I went to see another DG Home, and there was a new DG, and I said, maybe we should do what the Brits have done for years, where they set up inside the Home Office a dedicated unit for strategic communication by hiring people from the advertisement world. And the Commission very quickly decided to set up that. At the same time, I talked to my Belgian friend, and I say, why don't you host that unit? For several reasons, because I thought it was a good idea for cross-fertilization, the UK experience applied to Belgium. It was in Brussels, and I said, myself, I have to improve the way I do communicate, because, of course, it's very important. And that led to the creation of what we called at the time the Syrian Strategic Communication Advisory Team. Quickly, it transformed itself into something more, less linked to the phenomenon of foreign terrorist fighters, more linked to terrorism as a whole. And now they have even expanded the scope of what they do to look into other forms of radicalization like extreme right, extreme left, and so on. And it's now called the European Strategic Communication Network. That was more a team of advisors to help member states to be more strategic in their communication. The second step, a very nice step by the Commission, was to earmark money to find or empower credible voice in civil society. And they launched a program called the Civil Society Empower Program, 10 million. There has been a tender. I have not seen the detail of who got what sort of money, but try to find more voice in civil society. The third step of the Commission, and it's a very important step, was to create a public-private partnership with the large internet companies called the European Internet Forum, where the main discussion in the first phase was on how can we get more unlawful content removed from internet. And the first approach was mainly voluntary, relying on the companies themselves. We set up mechanisms to draw their attention through the creation of an internet referral unit. I won't go into the detail. Europol set up an internet referral unit, quite successful. The companies set up specific database to prevent the re-uploading of unlawful content. But a certain stage, recently the Commission reached the conclusion that we were not making enough progress. And that led the Commission to table a draft legislation which will then create a new instrument allowing member states to instruct the companies to remove unlawful content. Needless to say that the company doesn't like it, that our American friends are not fond of this approach because it may have some impact on free speech, but I believe that it's very much needed. The removal order which is created is not the most important aspect of this legislation, but it puts more pressure on the companies to police what they put on their platform and to remove unlawful content very quickly. Why? We all agree. What made the difference between AQ and Daesh is the control over territory and internet, and especially a video game generation able to design messages very attractive, high definition glossy production. I was told by experts that some beheadings that you could see on internet have been filmed 10 times before that the people were actually beheaded, because they wanted to have the best light, the best shot, which shows how professional they were. Even more professional because they have understood that, like the advertisement for Coca-Cola, you need to work on emotion. You have to work on the subliminal and more than the rational to convince people to buy this idea of jihad cool. So we are there in a public-private discussion with the companies on the negative side, how to remove unlawful content, as well as how to be ourselves more proactive and develop ourselves a counter-narrative or an alternative narrative. There is a lot more that we could achieve. And one thing I would like to push more in the Internet Forum is on the search engine, so that when you search for extremist material, the algorithm of Google or other search engine company will put in what some people call the dark net, i.e. page 2, 3, 4, because all of us, we are pretty lazy. We tend to only look at the result of a search on page 1. So if we could find a way to push on page 2, 3, 4 the most extremist material, that would be quite an achievement. So I think we are now on the right track on that front. Most member states have benefited from the advice of the European Strategic Communication Network, and I think even in countries where they were a bit skeptical, they now are investing on Stratcom. My second point is why is it even more relevant today than it was in 2013 when the phenomenon of the foreign terrorist fighters started? We have seen, we have the collapse of the caliphate. The physical caliphate has been destroyed. There are still some pockets in Syria, but by and large, it's a military victory, but we still have a virtual caliphate. When you ask our security service what is the main threat we are faced in Europe, it's probably no longer the FTF, the foreign terrorist fighters. It's not that much the returnees, because we haven't seen a massive flow of returnees, unlike what we expected. It's more homegrown, just people inspired by the ideology, people who have not traveled to Syria and Iraq, people who have no connection with Daesh, no connection with Al-Qaeda, they just inspire. And the internet is probably the main booster for that process. Of course, the communication of Daesh has changed a lot because they don't have the resource, they don't control the territory, so they can not produce the same volume as they were before. There is a decline in the volume. It's probably less communication directly by Daesh, official communication, than communication by a network of fanboys. It's a different message. They cannot claim a victory anymore. So it's more working on trying to build on the grievances, try to divide, try to polarize, try to exploit the grievances that people have in our society, the feeling of injustice, discrimination, Islamophobia. You can list the possible grievances. some move to the dark web, some move to encrypted platform, and a recent trend is to see jihadi material more and more hidden in religious extremist websites. So people looking for something more religious will find a gateway to more extremist websites. So this leads me just to, and I finish with this, my third point, why do I believe that initiative like this one is so useful? First, because that's the main purpose of the exercise, it's critical to delegitimize the rhetoric of Daesh, the rhetoric of Al-Qaeda, and show the true nature of this enterprise. As I said to Anne, I'm just back from Iraq. I was 2 days ago in Mosul. Just take a picture of Mosul. That's probably the best counter-narrative you can find. Everything is destroyed. It's really, really impressive. The question is, what is the mix we need? We need, of course, what Anne is doing with interviews, the counter-narrative part, just showing the ugly truth. And at the same time, as experts suggest, we need to develop ourselves our own narrative, and not just counter the narrative, but make our point, or all the values that we have in our society. The second merit that I see in this project is, of course, through the interviews, you help us understand better the drivers. What led these people to endorse this crazy ideology? ISIS defectors, returnees, capture ISIS, probably middle management, women. We tend now to believe that women are much more dangerous than we thought, and that may explain why member states are not that keen to see the return not only of the male, but the woman as well. So that's of critical importance. So this is a perfect tool for prevent in schools, for education, and I think for this engagement program as well. So these are all the good reasons why I was so glad to accept your invitation to speak shortly. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Gilles. I thought that was a terrific presentation. I think one of the things that's so interesting is that we live in a moment where politics and terrorism, all of it is based more and more on emotion. It's not based on rational thought. It's based on emotional reaction. I don't want to talk about the President of the United States, but if you go to a Trump rally and you go to a professional wrestling match, you will see the crowds are very similar. And they are all reacting to emotion. ISIS knew, as Gilles pointed out, ISIS knew better than any other terrorist group how to exploit that. Qatar is a country that's actually pursued policies based on reason, not emotion. Building alliances, building friendships with countries all throughout the region and throughout the world, which inevitably in today's world means they also have made a few enemies. But we won't talk about those today. And I'd like to invite the ambassador to speak now.
Thank you, Chris. I will take advantage of this platform here to speak about my country. It's an opportunity for me also to explain so many things that Qatar has been doing with the international community. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving me this floor to speak to you today. It really gives me a great honor to take part in this important event, to exchange experiences and knowledge in order to enhance the global cooperation in our fight against violent extremism. I would first of all like to express my deep appreciation for the work done by the International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism, and especially for the commitment that's been shown by the director, Anne Spighart. I hope I pronounced your name right. As anyone living in a major European city knows all too well, that we have been living through an era of unpredictable terrorist attacks, committed by a smaller group of determined extremists who are set to inflict damage and fear on innocent civilians. Over time, their tactics have changed, while our understanding of the causes of terrorism and the best way to address them have evolved in a much slower pace. There is indeed a great need to improve our understanding of this common enemy so that we can develop a better understanding of the root causes of terrorism and find solutions to eradicate this cycle of violence. I come from a region that has been, unfortunately, deeply affected by extremism of all kinds. The Middle East is going through the most critical period of its history. Never before has the region faced so many existential threats as it has encountered in the past decade. In addition to the long-standing conflict that have prevented the region's people from enjoying stability, more deadly conflict have come to make the picture bleaker. Poverty, ignorance, unemployment, and marginalizations are all influential factors in persuading disillusioned people to follow an extremist ideology. Recent examples of the catastrophes created by evil ideologies can be found across the MENA region. These conflicts threaten the lives of 24 million innocent children, most of whom live in Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. Survivors of these mass atrocities grow up to become young adults with little hope for a better future. This lack of hope sustained cycle of violence I just mentioned, fueling poverty, marginalizations, and in turn leading more young people to extremist path. Fighting the threats of violence extremism is one of the cornerstones of my country's foreign policy. These terrorist groups make no secret of their strategy to spread chaos and instability and to drive wedge between people of different creeds and religious belief, that is. Our region is in the front line of threats posed by terrorist groups such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda, as you all know. The situation has spiraled out of control because of the chaos prevailing in Syria, which requires the attention and cooperation of the entire international community. Qatar believes that the strategy to fight the ideology should focus on fighting the grip and tightening the grip of ISIS and its followers all over the world and prevent it from further spreading its radical ideology and attracting more recruits. To achieve this goal, the state of Qatar has been among the first countries to join the US-led military coalition to fight terrorism and provide significant support in facilitating US military operations in the region. The state of Qatar has hosted, since 2006, the largest US military base in the Middle East, where strikes are launched against terrorist targets on a daily basis. Along with other members of the coalition, we are committed to combating and drying up the funding sources of ISIS and dismantling the economic structure of the organization. Besides, Qatar has signed an MOU with the United States, the only country in the world, by the way, or in the region, to combating terrorism and its financing. We have deep strategic relationship with the US, and it's in the forefront of combating terrorism by promoting moderate ideology abroad and backing popular demands of freedom in the region. The second US-Qatar counterterrorism dialogue took place in Doha last September. The American side praised the measures taken by Qatar in cooperating with the international community in combating terrorism and its finances. The two sides agreed on the importance of continuing their cooperations in this regard. Qatar is also a founding member of the Global Counterterrorism Forum, and it plays a leading role in the United Nations to coordinate the international effort to address issues of violent extremism and radicalizations among youth in different communities. Qatar has made a $5 million contribution to the Global Community Engagement and Resilience Fund, which makes it one of the largest donor countries to fund projects to combat violent extremism and build peaceful societies. The fund is the first global initiative to support the resilience of societies against violent extremism agenda. It has also supported the United Nations Counterterrorism Center with $250,000 donation to support the center's activity. Qatar is committed to implement the United Nations relevant Security Council resolutions that addresses counterterrorism. On the national level, the state of Qatar established the National Counterterrorism Committee in 2007 to ensure the achievement of the strategy to countries and fight against terrorism through the security-related efforts and cooperation with the relevant bodies as well. Last year, Law Number 11 introduced new provisions on 2004 law that strengthen combating terrorism. It declares the creation of two list names, a terrorist list and terrorist entities list. On the international level, institutional level, a decision was issued in June 2017 by His Highness the Emir, the Supreme Committee for Anti-Money Laundering and Combating the Financing of Terrorism. The committee provides immediate and direct guidance to take in all actions and measures to combat terrorism and financing and money laundering. The Qatari government is aware that combating terrorism is a long-standing mission and demands resolves and determinations. Yes, the use of military and intelligence are crucial to countering terrorism, but we have found that tough security measures are not enough. This endeavor has more chances of succeeding if reinforced by addressing the root causes of terrorism and counterbalancing ISIS ideology. The Qatari approach is based on development and includes education, economic empowerment, and prevention. My country opted for the comprehensive educational policy to develop the criteria and educational system, establishing schools, universities, research and training centers, and taking benefit from recent educational experiences and modern technological achievement. The curricula has been adapted to a country's need for development and to achieve Qatar Vision 2030. Our educational systems tend to promote analytical and critical thinking and to develop creativity and innovations, as these are the arms of children and young people to face the challenges and to make their own choices. Yet all of these won't be possible if we live in a region where other children and youth have less opportunity. Many Qatari initiatives work in this direction, like the Qatar Educational Above All Foundation, led by Her Highness Sheikh Hamouza, has recently succeeded in reaching its goal of educating 10 million school children all over the world, regardless of race, religion, or nationality. To get children back to school in Gaza and Palestine and away from violent extremism, Qatar has supported numerous programs with multilateral partners to provide quality education to almost 300,000 students and benefit more than 5,000 teachers and educational staff. For Syria, for example, Qatar Upholding Education for Syrians Trust, also known as Quest, was launched at the 71st United Nations General Assembly to ensure children and youth affected by the Syrian crisis to access education. Qatar Quest is supporting two programs launched by Education Above All, Educate a Child, benefiting to 100,000 out-of-school children at the primary level in Syria, Iraq, and in Lebanon, benefiting to almost 6,000 higher education students in Syria, Turkey, Lebanon, and Iraq. The state of Qatar works also on economic empowerment for the youth. MENA region faces the highest rate of unemployment youth in the world, and as supporting the future of Arab youth means supporting Arab societies. The Qatari Silatic Foundation has emerged as a development organization that links Arab youth with employment and economic opportunities. By the end of 2017, Silatic succeeded in raising more than $377 million to connecting more than 650,000 youth to job opportunities. Silatic recently has a program in 16 Arab countries. Given that, Qatar will continue its policy based on the promotion of the values of tolerance, culture of pluralism and dialogue, education, and fighting extreme poverty in order to build safe and sustainable societies, as we believe that educating a child, give him a chance in this challenging world, is worth the battle. Thank you for your attention. Next speaker, maybe.
Well, you all know Anne, and she is the next speaker. But I just wanted to say in regard to the ambassador's remarks that it's so important to understand that you can't ultimately deal with terrorism just by building walls, putting in more metal detectors, putting in more body detectors, all the things that we have to go through at American airports. Ultimately, to defeat terrorism, you have to defeat the idea of terrorism. That's exactly what Anne is doing, and that's exactly what she's going to talk about now.
Thank you, Jill and Ambassador and Chris, for so many remarks that go right to the heart of the matter. And indeed, the program that we're doing, Breaking the ISIS Brand, is going after the idea. But when we really think about the end to terrorism, a number of political leaders have said we can't shoot our way out of this. We can't kill our way out of this. We need soft power approaches as well. So we're very grateful to Qatar for the lunch today, and we're also grateful for their support to our project, which they've been one of the primary supporters in the last year, and we're grateful for that. Thank you. So anyway, I also listed the people in the room, Hamid Sabali and Ardian Sheikhovsi, as because we've all recently been in Syria together twice. And doing this research, so this isn't just me alone, it's a group of people. And thank God I have them, because otherwise I'd be scared to death. And anyway, so in my career, George Shabib remembers, 15 years ago, when I was going to Paris to talk to kids that were burning cars, he took me to Hezbollah to talk to one of the spokesmen. And Hamid remembers when I was going in and out of Morocco, into Iraq, designing for the US military. We had, at that point in the Iraq War, over 20,000 detainees, and we had 800 juveniles held by US forces. And the US military heard about me. They said, at that time I had interviewed 400 terrorists, and they said, would you please come and make us a de-radicalization program? So I tried, and we did design one. It was both Islamic challenge and psychological. It never got implemented the way that I had hoped, because, you know, whenever you're trying to do something, you're also in the middle of politics. And we had the awakening and the tribes asking for their kids back. So there were mass releases of people that weren't treated, and the hardcore people that should have been treated were not. And unfortunately, we've seen them again as ISIS. And honestly, at that time, when I was asked to go into Iraq, I was very scared. And I thought, and honestly, I prayed about should I do it. And I was living here in Belgium at the time. And I thought, if I don't go and try to change those people's minds that are in the prisons in Camp Bucca and Camp Cropper, we're going to see them again. And I don't want my children to see them. So I'll do it for my kids. Because I was asking myself as a mother, should I go? You know, maybe I should stay home and play it safe. And I did think, you know, could my legs get blown off? Could I come back blind? Could I not come back at all? But unfortunately, we have seen them again, and we've seen them in Europe. My family doesn't live in Europe anymore. So I guess my kids escaped that, but you know, what we've seen has been so awful. But anyway, to get to it, after interviewing about 600 terrorists at this point, and also with my colleagues, not just me, I would say there's four things that make a terrorist. If you ask me, what did I learn? I learned there's almost always a group. Very few people function without a group. You need a group to give you equipment. You need a group to put you on the path towards your target. You need a group to talk you into it, to say terrorism is a solution to the problems that you're angry about, or that you're unhappy about, or that it's a way to consolidate your identity. And groups form ideologies, and most people won't jump over the moral barrier of trying to kill another innocent. So, you know, somebody's not going to bring a machine gun in here and kill all of us unless they get convinced that this is something good. And terrorist groups develop ideologies that say, so ISIS and Al-Qaeda say, Muslims are under attack, Islam itself is under attack, Islamic lands are under attack. We have to fight back and we have to go to extraordinary measures. And we can kill innocents because they kill our innocents. It's defensive jihad. But we have other terrorist groups that argue completely different, but in some ways exactly the same. So abortion clinic terrorists will say, oh, unborn babies are being killed, so you have a right to take a gun and stand outside of an abortion clinic and shoot that doctor because he's a killer. And so you see that they jump you over a moral barrier through their ideology. So you have a group, an ideology, and then you have some kind of social network that tells you, indeed, you're right. You should do this, because most of us, we look around and we say, what do you think, Beatrice? Should I do this? You know, is this the right thing to wear today? You know, we compare notes, right? And nowadays, if you have a phone, you have a social network. So you can have guys in Raqqa, you can have guys in Mosul, and you can be the sole one in Brussels, but you have a group, and they're all telling you, this is a good idea, you should do this, you'll be a hero. And that's really frightening, how quickly a group can form around a vulnerable individual. And then you have what's inside the individual. And in conflict zones, we know that usually the motivations and the vulnerabilities have a lot to do with revenge, a feeling of occupation, trauma, wanting to exit from this life because there's just too much trauma surrounding them, and wanting to hurt the other side. In non-conflict zones, although when we look in some of our cities, and my cities included, some of them are conflict zones. We like to think we live in non-conflict zones, but it's not always true. And some families can be conflict zones. But generally, when we look at places like Western Europe, US, Canada, where these 40,000 people came from, well, not all 40,000, but a great number, 5,000 from Europe that went to ISIS, why would they go? As Jill was asking, why would they leave Europe and go to hell? Why would they do this? And it has to do with what's inside of themselves. Are they so bored they want an adventure? Do they feel discriminated and someone came and said to them, I have some place that's all-inclusive where you'll have an important purpose, significance, dignity, a job, a wife? Did they come and say, you can live an Islamic life here? It's different for everyone, and there's at least 50 vulnerabilities. We've written a lot of papers on them. They're all on our website, and I can't take the time to go through all of them. Here I always like to show this slide. We took this off of an ISIS guy. We asked in the beginning when we were interviewing people that weren't in prison, 32 Syrians that had run away from ISIS, and we always asked for their pictures on their phones. So here you can see money. And money can be a motivator, that's absolutely for certain, but it's very rarely the only motivator. And then we look at gender aspects. And as I told you, we have some mothers of women that went. Women have different pathways than men for going. They also have different experiences. We're in these groups. And we've certainly talked to women that have been torturers, that have bitten other women, bitten them so badly with a metal biter as a torture, and caused the other women to die from the biting, to bleed out. But then we have women that were just falling in love, getting married, thinking I'm going to help build this caliphate, not having any violent intentions, and completely horrified when they got into a place that was where the promises weren't delivered. And we're going to hear from some of those women on video today. So one of the things that we need to understand about ISIS is that they were naming all of these grievances and many more. So occupation, violence, torture, rape, loss of land and resources. Maybe it didn't happen to you, but it happened to your Muslim brothers and sisters, and you need to do something about it. Corruption, sectarian fighting, maybe you're feeling marginalized and discriminated, maybe you're frustrated, and then answers. I have dignity, I have belonging, significance, purpose, opportunity, Islamic ideals. I'm building a caliphate, and you can be part of it. It starts to sound seductive, doesn't it? And as Jill was telling us, they were so good in their filming and what they put on social media. And a lot of people credit ISIS with being really good at filming, but we have to remember Hamas, Hezbollah, they had video games for children. They had films too, but they didn't have social media. And ISIS came at the right time for them. And what they could do is they could send all this out at the push of a button. They didn't have to be Osama bin Laden who makes a cassette and has it delivered to Al Jazeera and hopes that they'll play it. They just push a button and boom, it's out there. It's on Facebook, it's on Twitter, and they get force multipliers to retweet, so it goes out to literally billions of people. And then they could wait and see. Did you like my tweet? Did you like it? Would you like to come? Do you need a girlfriend? How about you? Maybe things are not so good at home and you'd like to come and join. Maybe you need money. Would you like to come? And anybody that liked or retweeted or shared or wrote comments on their propaganda materials, they personally contacted them. So imagine that. When you talk about strategic communications, we wish that our center was able to do that. We wish that when we put our films out and people comment and say pro-ISIS things, that we could get in a discussion with them. But we don't have the staff and the resources yet for that. But we should have it. Because we should fight them the same as they fight us, which is what they say, actually. And but anyway, a few years back, I was sitting with my government, and we decided ISIS was so prolific and so successful on the internet, could we take some of the interviews that I was doing and make them into videos? Because in the past, I never video interviewed. Could we get a video, and then could we chop it down to the most damning and denouncing aspects of the experiences in ISIS and create counter-narratives? And when I first talked about doing this, I said, there's no way I can't get an ISIS interview. Well, that proved to not be true because we now have 101 ISIS interviews, and we have 16 of al-Shabaab. We've managed to get in. I always say, I guess I'm a good terrorist hunter. And the videos we've made 79 videos. There's over 100 in process right now. And that's thanks to your government that has been very kind and generous with helping us to put our project on steroids. Thank you to Qatar for that. And everything that we do, our model is we try to get ourselves paid, but then everything we do is put out there for free. So you can use it. Anybody can use it. And you're going to hear from some people that are using our materials. And we try to put them in multiple languages. Again, we're a small center. We hope to grow so we can have subtitlers just go boom, boom, boom every time we make a video. But ISIS is recruiting in 25 languages. So we're trying to fight them in 25 languages. So here's a picture of our YouTube channel. Every video, of course, gets subtitled in English first. Then we try for French, Albanian, Russian, Arabic subtitles, Malay, Uzbek, doesn't matter. Wherever ISIS is reaching people, we try to use those same languages. And we also started creating a study guide because when we went to the Netherlands, when we went in Belgium, in Liège and Antwerp, people told us, we like your videos, but we're not quite sure how to use them. So we create a study guide that describes the video, says what issues it's addressing, gives discussion questions, and we have an Islamic scholar who addresses the Islamic issues in that particular video and says, this is what ISIS is claiming, here's what scholarly Islam would say about this. And, it's just not true. They don't have any basis to stand on. And here's our statistics of where we are right now. We're pretty much managing to put out 2 videos every week. And again, that is thanks to Qatar. And let's see. And we recently started making posters to use as memes on the internet. So if you walk around later and maybe you saw them on your way in, those are examples of them. And we printed them up to be on display here just to give you an idea of what we're doing. But really the intention is to spread those all over the internet. And I should say Facebook has partnered with us, and we're very proud of that. So they allow us to do campaigns over the world. We're running, I think, 60 campaigns right now. Dr. Sheikovsky runs those. And there's one running in Belgium right now. There's one running in Netherlands right now. There's one running in France, Iraq. And they're throwing these videos out to people that may be vulnerable. So these are our country partners. And the ones here, Kenya, North Syria, Rojava, Iraq, Kosovo, Albania, have been trusting enough to us to let us in their prisons to talk to the ISIS prisoners that are willing to talk to us. So that's how we've managed to get where we've gotten with interviews. And then these are the people that have funded us and have invited us to make trainings. And again, our model is, if you invite us, we will try to come and make a training for you without asking you for anything. So our next stop after Belgium, we're going to Kazakhstan. We're doing a training for UN ODC. Azerbaijan has asked us to come. Somalia has asked us to come, and we try to go wherever we're asked and do as much good as we can. So these are some of the countries where we've given trainings. And then we know that these videos work for face-to-face interventions. I wish I had Omar Mulbukas here. He's a prevent counselor, and he told us, I was working with a 13-year-old, and this was when Raqqa was still held by ISIS. And he said, this 13-year-old came for counseling sessions, and I was so afraid because his third session, every time he was saying, I'm going to Raqqa. And he said, I was sure he was going to go. I thought maybe I won't see him the next session. And what should I do? And he said, I suddenly remembered you had made this video of a Cubs of the Caliphate. So I turned it on for him in the third session. And the kid, you know, his little thug, he said, is that for real? And Omar said, yeah, that's for real. And that's a real person. And he said, I'm not going. So I changed his mind. And, you know, how wonderful is that? And Miriam, you had your doubts about that video. You were a little worried that maybe it was too rough, showing too much of ISIS. Because I should say, when we make our videos, it's a person talking, and that's boring. So we splice it in with taking actual propaganda from ISIS videos. And if they're talking about there was a beheading, we don't show the gory parts of it, but we show the lead up from ISIS propaganda video so that while the person's talking, you're seeing this emotional content. And some in the EU have said, you're repeating the terrorist frame. And we say, yes, we are, with disgust, with horror, with different emotions attached, and with a different conclusion attached, that this isn't good, it's harmful, it's brutal, it's un-Islamic, it's corrupt. Don't take part in it. And we also, when we put our videos up on YouTube, we take a picture from one of those parts of the video, and we name it The Glorious Cubs of the Caliphate, or Women in the Islamic State. So you don't know, is this a counter-narrative or is this an ISIS video? So hopefully, if you're watching ISIS videos, you click on one of ours by accident. And we try to send them out that way. And with the Facebook campaigns, we're able to do that. So we get feedback from other people that are using our videos face-to-face. They're being rolled out in Denmark right now to teachers. And we just recently talked to Gert about maybe possibly doing that in Belgium, which would be wonderful. For me, I think all kids should be exposed to virulent ideologies and inoculated against them at a young age, because they are going to run into them. And it's like anything else. You know kids are going to be sexually active, so you have to tell them about sex and contraceptive. You know that they're going to be exposed to drugs and alcohol, so you have to tell them. Well, it's the same thing with ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, the rest of them. They're going to run into it on the internet. If we think they're not going to, we're fools, and we have to inoculate them against it. So we also do many Facebook campaigns, and we write up our results about them. We try to keep up with ourselves in terms of data. A lot of people have said you're quite prolific in your writing. We always feel like we're way behind, but everything's on our website. It's free, and it describes how a campaign went. In one of our Iraq campaigns, we got over 1 million views of one video, and we were quite happy with that. And then, of course, we look at the comments. So we're always looking at the metrics and trying to figure out what works and what's engaging and that sort of thing. So we also decided recently that our videos are good, but they are designed to break the ISIS brand. So to make you feel like, oh, I thought this was a good idea, maybe it's not. But then what do? You have a grievance, you're angry, you don't have any redirection, and we have to redirect. And redirect to the good Europe or the good of where you're living. So created the Real Jihad website, and at the end of each video, and when we send them out on campaigns, we tell them about the Real Jihad website. And on this website, it's only beginning, but we start with Islamic arguments, very long ones, not what you could have in a video. We redirect to positive places that you can go. If you want to be an activist and you want to fight against social issues, here's democratic ways to do so instead of terrorist ways to do so. If you need counseling, if you're stuck in something and it's not good for you, you're looking for escape, you don't have to go to terrorism. You can go to this place or that place. But as you know, all of these initiatives are just being started now. So we welcome, if you know of good organizations that we can refer to on the Real Jihad website from any of the countries that you represent, please tell us. And we will list them because we hope that's positive. We just started it. I think July was when it went live, and we already have 14,000 visitors. So it's doing something. And now I wanted to show you, this is a Facebook campaign that we did in Belgium. And we used, we have already 22 counter-narratives subtitled in French, so anybody can use them. We have 32 subtitled in Dutch. And we, for 1 month, ran a campaign with these different videos. And you know, Belgium is a smaller country, so we didn't get millions of views, but we got 51,000 views, which is impressive. We got 500 visits from those views to look at other videos on the ICSVE website. We didn't have the Real Jihad made at that time. And we got 2,000 posts and reactions. And then when we did have the Real Jihad website, we got 650 visits. So we hope that it's working. And we have found ways of getting actually to the vulnerable people on Facebook. But we're still developing that, and don't talk too much about it yet. So this is what we did in the Netherlands. And it's pretty similar. We got 10,000 video views there, 400 visits to the channel, 100 comments, reactions. And you know, sometimes the comments are stupid, just like everywhere. And this is our team that likes to be shown, and there's others that can't be shown because they live in dangerous places or they're actually afraid. And I'd like to show you one of our videos. We're going to show you 3 of our videos today, but this is one, and then I will sit down. Oops. I don't know if you can help me. Oh, there we go. Okay. This, one of the mothers of this girl is in the room. Can you make it play? Or do I have to click it? Do I need to, or are you going to? Okay.
My dad, he wanted to live the really Islamic life. My dad came first, and then he called me. He just said, life is better here, you can wear your whole hijab, and we are not oppressed here. Just that my dad said I'm not coming back was enough for me to come, actually. I never watched, and when my dad called me, I tried to watch on YouTube. I looked up like how's life in ISIS. There wasn't really anything on YouTube. And he convinced me to come, so I came. They entered me in a pickup, and they took me to a woman's house. In Bab Limon, I stayed for a week, and then they take me to Raqqa. The Raqqa is like a big house full of women. I told them I have my dad here, and they went up, looked up for him, and they brought him. My husband was a soldier in Iraq. When we got married, he went 3 times, and then he stopped going. He didn't like it anymore. He didn't like the way ISIS thinks. They have a problem in their religion, how they do stuff. Mostly they punish with death. It's the most common punishment. And after mostly 3 months of marriage, I got pregnant. He stopped going to work, and then we tried to get out of ISIS. but so many things happened. It's very difficult to get out. We're gonna cross the border. We went to the last point of last town. The problem is we're a lot, and Free Syrian Army was advancing, and everybody was evacuating from that little town. Us going to there was a little bit suspicious, and when we are going, there is a car of police that comes. They're saying to my dad, "Why are you taking your family?" He's like, "Oh, just here." He's like, "Yeah, no, we know." And then they came and took my dad. They left us in a house first. They took my dad to prison. They interrogated him, and then they came and took us. They put us in prison, but then we needed to evacuate Al-Bab, so they evacuated and they took us to Raqqa. They wanted us to put us in a woman's house, but we women, we ran away. When they put my husband and my dad in prison, my dad, because he's older, he just stayed 2 weeks and he got out. But my husband, because he's younger, he stayed a long time. He stayed like almost 6 months. So my dad was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not staying here, let's go." So we started walking, and then they started shooting on us. They started shooting on us. They killed all the men. He died in front of me. I got a bullet in my back and a bullet other places. They came and interrogated me, like, "Why do you want to go? You should fear God." And I just said, "Yeah, a big mistake," just playing the game with them. And then I got out. They put me in a woman's house until my husband got out of prison. 2 months we stayed and we got out. Of course it's hard. You want freedom. You want to go out. It's just psychological. It's difficult. I have a son and I'm pregnant 7 months. But being in prison with your kid is worse, I think, than being in prison alone. Because you see him suffer. He's 1 year and a half, so he doesn't really understand. So he thinks it's fun. He goes out. He sits in front of the tent, takes stones and starts throwing on everyone. So it's all fun. But for me, really, just see him like this. He almost needs to go to school. Normally he needs to play with stuff. They can say it's Islam, but it's not really. No, they're bad Muslims. They're not Muslims. Don't even call them Muslims, please. That just gives a bad name to Muslims. When you go to Syria, they hate us. Yeah, they hate them. They hate ISIS. I heard about slaves. I heard about how they treat slaves. Yeah, that was also a reason. That's why I'm saying they're wrong. Because how they treat slaves was not on the Islamic way of treating slaves. Of course I want to go home. I want to go to my mother. My sister got so many kids, I don't even know them. My family doesn't know my kid yet. If they put me in prison, that's the consequences of my mistakes, so I will have to live with them. Don't even look up ISIS, forget ISIS.
They didn't, they could be lying, but they didn't seem to have any battle or policing experience. They hadn't, if they're telling the truth, really taken on the ideology of ISIS, and they were quite shocked when they got there. And now they're sitting with little children in a camp. And I don't know how you feel, but I don't like to see children detained, imprisoned, and it's something we really need to think about. For her, I was very disturbed to think that she's going to have a baby in a camp. Her baby is now 1 month old. So it's a social issue. We have to decide, are we taking these people back? And with the women and the children under 10, we really need to think. But that's another issue. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was quite a film, huh? Quite a story. Now we're going to hear from Gert Verkoteren, who looks to me like the man who handles the matrix, or the matrices anyway, of terrorism as they are assembled here in Belgium. He's head of the coordination unit for threat assessment, or CUTA, or CUTA. I don't even know how to begin to pronounce it in Flemish. And he draws up specific and strategic evaluations of terrorist and extremist threats in and to Belgium. There's more to it. He works closely with the Institute for the Study of Combating Violent Extremism, but I'll let him tell you all about that. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's always difficult to speak after the star of the day, so I hope I can still grab your attention, especially after this impressive testimony I think we just saw. First of all, allow me to express our admiration, my admiration and appreciation for the work that is being done by Anne and her dedicated team. We should not underestimate how much courage it takes to get where she gets, or where they get, not only over there, but also in our countries. It's difficult to persuade people to testify in front of a camera and to be ready to expose yourself to all kinds of consequences that you cannot foresee when they're making the movie. Neither the people who are interviewed, nor always those who interview them. A lot of persuasion, perseverance to collect it, and we appreciate it. The conditions are sometimes risky and threatening, are not only abroad, but they can also be even more threatening in the West. There's always a sort of danger of retaliation by people who are still fond of IS or its ideology. Most of all, what we do appreciate is, it is concrete work. It's actionable, it's usable, and it's user-friendly. It is freely available. That's what we like. I will not so much talk about the threat situation in Belgium. I think it has been touched upon by Gilles already. The threat has just a few words, because you might otherwise feel that I came for nothing. The threat has become much more diffuse in its nature than before. In the first stage of IS, we were confronted with people who were sent by IS to our countries to commit attacks. And the last ones of those we saw with the attacks in Brussels here, 22 March 2016, a date that is well known here in Belgium and in many other countries as well, of course. That was actually the last time that IS managed to send out operatives, as far as we know, and directly target the countries in the West. The second stage were people who were teleguided by IS, who were in contact with operatives, with IS fighters over there, and who, by all sort of apps, mostly it was WhatsApp, Telegram, teleguided people here, sympathizers here, to commit attacks. These people were in direct contact. We saw a number of attacks in the West from that type. And then the third type that was, it almost followed upon each other chronologically, is the type of attack that we still witness now. And that is an attack by people who are no longer directly connected to ISIS, who have not been there, who are not in direct contact with WhatsApp or with other means of communication, but who seem to be inspired by IS, Al-Qaeda, or its ideology, and who shout Allah Akbar when they commit an attack. But quite often, when we look at their background, it's not really clear whether they were really radicalized to the full extent that we used to see them before. We see that a lot of these people were fragile, mentally fragile, had psychological, even psychiatric problems. And it's almost sometimes as if it was a sort of suicide by cop attack that is given a source of IS to give it more credibility and to give it more impact, so to say. And that's a new phenomenon we see now in the whole of Western Europe. It's very diffuse because the people are not known to security services before. They are not on our lists. And they were not known for radical, most of them are not known for radical behavior. So it's the mixture of these last two categories that we are now still facing. Anyway, returning to the work done by Anne and the team, I remember I was assisting a conference in Denmark about the Aarhus model, which is a well-known model of prevention and de-radicalization. And what struck me, well, we had a lot of testimonies from so-called formers, that is, people who had been active members of extremist groups, both religiously inspired, but also people who came from the right-wing or the left-wing extremist scene. For different reasons, all of them had, meanwhile, abandoned not only the group in a form of disengagement, but also the ideology itself, so we can call them de-radicalized entirely. They were often assisted by a team of mentors and skilled professionals. What all of them pointed out is the importance of having access to seeds of doubt, like they call it. Elements that could have dissuaded them from stepping on the path of radicalization. And they were all very sad that they did not have access to the seeds of doubt in the early stages of their radicalization process. And I think that brings me to a couple of very main strengths of the work of Anne and her team. They work with formers in it somehow. Not all of them are formers, some are still in it, but all of them have been disengaged. They are no longer part physically of the group. And that makes that these people very accessible for the target audience. Why? Because they have street credibility. They've been there, they've done it. Second main strength, the fact is that the interviews are widely available, and I cannot stress it enough. They are professionally targeted, marketed, so that indeed people who are looking on the internet to know more about IS stand indeed a good chance to encounter the movies and actually see them because they are made in the same fashion as IS videos. I think it's a clever move. And hopefully, I'm quite convinced that in a lot of cases they work as seeds of doubt in the early stages of radicalization. Another strength of these videos is the low threshold. It is not a complicated ideological discourse or theological debate. This is about real people who've been there and who talk about their own experience in easy to understand vocabulary. It is a language from the street, from the people that everybody understands, and it's ready to be used in schools, prevention programs, but I think it can also be used by parents who feel their children are heading in the wrong direction. And it's more needed than ever. IS may have suffered some major defeats, it's not gone. In a paper written by ESCN, which was already explained by Gilles, this Belgian-British initiative in the field of counter-narrative in the EU, it is pointed out that the quantity of the IS material may be reduced, but not necessarily the impact. There is less official communication, but there is plenty of fanboys who post IS-inspired material, and there is a growing number of IS branches in the rest of the world, and look specifically at Africa, which is very worrying. which feed into the IS propaganda and do it in the same way as IS has shown them. The message itself may have shifted from the celebration of life in the caliphate to perhaps nostalgia now, how it was when the caliphate was still there. But there are still continuous appeals for retaliation, or, like they call it themselves, retributive terrorism. Let's make them pay the same price as we paid. The defeat is not definitive in their eyes. It is just a setback in a long way towards the establishment of the caliphate. And worrying also is, of course, the shift of communication by IS sympathizers to the darknet and encrypted private messaging apps. On the one hand, it's good because the outreach to a broader audience gets more limited. On the other hand, for police intelligence and security, it becomes more difficult to get track of these communications. And it does also not mean that the public spaces are no longer exploited by IS, because although the big companies, the Big Five and others, have done major efforts, there is still a lot of material available. A major challenge for our societies in the West is also the underlying stream of extremist religious ideas which emphasize the need for segregation and stress the impossibility to live a real Islamic life in a democratic society. In their eyes, Western schools and the education system, for instance, are seen as systems that corrupt the minds of our children. Religious life is reduced to haram and halal, and we see it in schools quite often. And what we see is what I would call fast food fatwas. It's just a collection of easy-to-find fatwas who don't come from educated religious scholars, but from people who call themselves scholars, imams, and put out their messages in quite often a very funny way. They're also using memes. We have seen them in the extreme right wing as well. But it's the same way of easy to share propaganda, ideas, very easy to consume. It's good that we can call them fast food fatwas, but it's not real religious ideas. I think the videos of Anne and her team should ideally be integrated into a broader prevention strategy. Prevention workers can integrate them in programs developed with and used by youth instances, education, etc. Escuta, or OCAT, OCAM in Flemish and in French, but cute sounds so much better, isn't it? We will not hesitate, Anne, to promote your work and work of your team and bring you into contact with the necessary stakeholders in Belgium. I think your work will be very useful. Last but not least, the people in the videos may teach us some lessons as well. We can see that quite often these are normal people from amongst us who were misled, yes, but they are not all distorted terrorists. We should accept as a society that it is human to make mistakes, and we should be ready to accept them again in our societies. Of course, they have a price to pay, but sooner or later they will be set free. It's our duty to integrate them again. Let us not forget that theirs was also a form of engagement, and that it's often driven by genuine ideals that went wrong, but that hopefully, in a lot of cases, and we're not naive, we know it will not be possible in all cases, can be transformed into a positive and legal mode of participation in our society and normal citizenship. So, that's a hope we cherish, and with these hopeful words, I would like to conclude. And perhaps Anne asked me also to introduce a next video, which is a video by a young lady, Laura Passoni, and I believe I was told she was also present. But anyway, that's the video that Anne and her team made of her. Thank you very much for your attention.
C'était mon premier amour, je l'aimais très très fort. Et quand il est parti avec une autre et qui m'a abandonnée et qui m'a laissé tomber, commençais à être très 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 dépressif. Et puis à cette époque-là, je me suis dit, il n'y a que la religion qui pourra me sauver. Et de là, en fait, j'ai voulu refaire un deuxième compte Facebook, plus religieux, pour pouvoir communiquer avec des personnes religieuses. C'est là que j'ai connu ce recruteur qui m'a rajouté de Facebook. Il a dit que les femmes, en fait, à ce moment-là, pour être infirmières, aider les orphelins et qu'on avait un statut et que les femmes étaient considérées comme voilà, précieuses. Nous, femmes, d'aller rejoindre pour avoir le paradis. Que j'aurais une villa, que j'aurais des chevaux, que j'aurais tout ce que je voulais en fait. Il disait ça, qu'on serait riche avec des diamants. Il m'a vendu vraiment du rêve et tout ce que je voulais, il me disait que je l'aurais en série. Donc nous, on a fait une croisière et cette croisière, en fait, elle s'arrêtait en Turquie. Donc nous, on est descendu du bateau à Izmir. Puis on a fait Izmir, Adana, Gaziantep. Et à Gaziantep, il y a les passeurs de l'État islamique qui nous ont pris pour pouvoir passer en Syrie. Moi, je voulais juste une chose, c'est aller en Syrie et retrouver, entre guillemets, mes nouveaux frères et sœurs. Oui, le recruteur m'a mis beaucoup de haine, même envers mes parents, la société et tout ça. Donc pour moi, la Belgique, c'était une page tournée et que ma vie, c'était en Syrie. Tout ce qu'il m'avait dit, c'était que mensongère. C'était pas ce qu'on m'avait promis. Nous, femmes, on est juste là pour procréer. On ne peut pas sortir toute seule, on ne peut pas faire les courses, on n'a pas d'argent, on n'a rien, on n'a pas de droits. Nous, on est séquestrés là-bas. C'est pas des vrais croyants. Je suis toujours musulmane à l'heure actuelle. Et l'islam, c'est pas ça. C'est pas tuer les innocents. Vraiment, pour moi, c'est pas des musulmans. Je dirais de ne pas partir, de s'informer et de ne pas faire la même erreur que moi. Parce que moi, j'ai gâché ma vie. J'ai mis en danger la vie de mon petit garçon. J'ai vraiment fait souffrir ma famille. Juste les prendre au piège. Il a vu que, que j'étais très, très déprimée, que mon ex m'avait abandonnée. Et alors il a joué sur ces faiblesses-là. Donc ils essayent de vendre du rêve pour qu'on puisse aller les rejoindre, tout simplement. Déchement par rapport à ce qui se trouve vraiment en Syrie. Ils ne sont pas là juste pour la religion, ils veulent juste le pouvoir et c'est tout.
Well, I think this is really one of the best conferences on terrorism I've ever been to, and I've been to quite a few. I was at one, actually here in Brussels some years ago, where they were talking about addressing the causes of terrorism, and I thought, well, wait a minute. It's really not as complicated as all that. If you want to talk about the causes of terrorism, most terrorists, there are three things that they have in common. Testosterone, mostly young men, a narrative that they believe in, not a narrative of them being oppressed, but maybe of other people being oppressed. It's a narrative in which they present themselves, or can be convinced that they will present themselves as heroes. That's why the seminal ideological work of Al-Qaeda is Knights Under the Prophet's Banner. It's chivalric. You're going to be a hero. You're going to be a knight. And then finally, theater. They want to project themselves on the world stage. But I was wrong. I was right about some people, and I was right in a world in which we love acronyms. It worked out great. Testosterone, narrative theater, TNT. You can remember it very easily. So it was all very cute. But what I was wrong about was the testosterone. It's not only boys, it's not only men, it's also women, and we're just beginning to understand that. And I think that Anne's work and the work of other people here, particularly our next two speakers, has been instrumental in helping us understand that. And all the nuances that Anne was talking about in her presentation. So now we're going to hear from Béatrice Bourmont, who is a criminologist by training and has been a police officer for 30 years, which must mean that she started in maternelle. She's the first commissioner in the federal police, coordination and support section for the administrative district of Liège, and in charge of radicalization and local task forces dealing with radicalization and terrorism, training police forces and social workers in radicalization matters. Now, Béatrice wants to speak in French. I think most people here will understand that. For those people who don't, do we have any kind of translation? Well, you're going to have to discuss that with Béatrice. She speaks very well. It's okay with me if she speaks French, but I know that there are several people who don't. Is there any translation from French to English?
It says we have it. Okay, we have it.
If you got it, we got it. Okay, Béatrice, go for it.
Okay. Thank you, Anne, for your invitation and to give me this opportunities to share our partnership and collaboration. Je vais continuer en français, si ça ne vous dérange pas. Ce sera plus confortable pour moi et certainement plus agréable pour vous. Alors, effectivement, je suis policier, je suis commissaire de police à la police fédérale. Et je vais essayer de vous démontrer comment nous travaillons avec des djihadistes, mais aussi des personnes qui se radicalisent, et comment nous essayons d'appréhender leur trajectoire pour mieux les comprendre et peut-être pour mieux les aider. Depuis plusieurs années, c'est-à-dire depuis 2005, en fait, nous avons ici en Belgique un plan de radicalisme. Ce plan a été revu maintes et maintes fois pour s'adapter non seulement aux nouvelles législations, mais aussi aux nouveaux événements. Ce plan a demandé que l'on mette en place des task force spéciales, ce que l'on appelle communément les task force locales. Ce sont des plateformes d'échange de renseignements en matière de terrorisme et de radicalisme. Suite à ce placement, à cette création de plateformes, il y a eu également une création de cellules de sécurité intégrale locales. Et ces cellules sont relativement récentes et se mettent en place doucement. Ces deux types de plateformes vont nous permettre d'assurer la chaîne de sécurité. En ce qui concerne le plan radicalisme, un plan donc, qui date de 2005 mais qui a été revu en 2016, ce plan va surtout s'axer sur la prévention du radicalisme et tenter de réduire le radicalisme en s'attaquant aussi à des vecteurs de radicalisation que sont les propagandistes de haine, mais aussi les différents médias sociaux. Ce plan va nous permettre de cartographier des individus, mais aussi des groupes, donc des individus radicalisés. Vous avez certainement entendu parler des Foreign Terrorist Fighters, mais aussi des Homegrown Terrorist Fighters, et peut-être aussi très prochainement des extrémistes potentiellement dangereux que nous allons donc cibler. Et pour ces individus et pour ces groupes, nous allons tenter de prendre certaines mesures. Ces mesures sont prises notamment en task force locale. Mais ce plan nous invite surtout à développer des partenariats, mais aussi des réseaux. Ces partenariats sont à la fois internes entre les services de police, mais aussi externes à la police, bien sûr, et surtout les partenariats internationaux sont importants. En ce qui concerne les plateformes judiciaires, que l'on appelle donc les task forces locales, ces plateformes vont nous permettre de rassembler différents partenaires. Vous avez eu tout à l'heure mon collègue de l'OCAM, ou QTA en anglais. Nous rassemblons également les services de renseignement, que ce soit la Sûreté de l'État ou les services de renseignement de l'armée, mais aussi les magistrats, bien sûr les policiers fédéraux et les policiers locaux, qui sont représentés par des personnes qui ont un rôle à jouer très important. Ce sont les Information Officers. Et puis nous avons aussi une collaboration très étroite avec le ministère des Affaires étrangères, surtout avec l'Office des étrangers, mais aussi les prisons, puisque vous le savez qu'il y a quand même un problème de radicalisation au sein des prisons. Donc nous allons au sein de ces plateformes partager des informations, mais nous allons aussi, surtout, prendre des mesures. Quel type de mesures? Elles seront variées, mais la principale mesure, c'est le suivi de personnes, le suivi direct de certaines personnes par différents services. Et puis, d'autres mesures peuvent être également prises. Et là, ce sont des mesures beaucoup plus restrictives par rapport aux libertés individuelles notamment. C'est le retrait du passeport, de la carte d'identité, de certaines habilitations, etc. Donc, nous prenons des actions, mais nous avons besoin de quoi au sein de ces task force locales? Bien, nous avons besoin de support, nous avons besoin d'études, nous avons besoin de formation. Nous avons besoin aussi d'informations internationales. Et puis, à côté de ces task force locales que je qualifie de judiciaires, mais ce n'est pas tout à fait le cas, donc à côté de ces task force policières, il y a aussi, surtout, et je pense que ces plateformes sociales seront amenées à se développer. Donc, ces plateformes qui sont appelées les cellules de sécurité intégrale locales vont avoir un rôle à jouer important dans les prochaines années. Le but de ces plateformes, c'est de réunir des intervenants sociaux, mais aussi des policiers. Le policier qui est à la fois présent dans les task force locales Information Officer sera présent dans ces cellules de sécurité intégrale locale. Alors, que va-t-on faire au sein de ces cellules? Eh bien, on va essayer de détecter le plus rapidement possible les premiers signes de radicalisation pour essayer d'assurer un certain suivi, mais alors là, social, de ces personnes qui sont sur, on va peut-être le dire, sur une mauvaise pente. Alors, l'échange d'informations au sein de ces cellules est bien sûr important, à la fois en interne, mais aussi avec les task force locales. Et cet échange de renseignements ne se fait qu'à l'unanimité des membres de ces cellules de prévention. Alors, de nouveau, comme les plateformes judiciaires, ces cellules ont besoin d'informations, de formation, etc. J'espère que vous voyez où je veux en venir. Alors, effectivement, le plan d'action que nous avons mis au point et qui se met à jour régulièrement, mais aussi les plateformes judiciaires, les task force locales et les plateformes sociales ont besoin donc de support. Et ces supports, à titre personnel, moi je les trouve aussi au sein du Centre international d'études de l'extrémisme violent, mais bien sûr au sein aussi d'autres recherches, puisque nous travaillons et nous avons besoin des chercheurs, mais aussi du monde académique. Alors, quels sont les outils sur lesquels nous pouvons disposer et les outils finalement que j'utilise? Parce que je suis, à côté de ma fonction de dirigeant des local task force pour la province de Liège, je suis aussi chargée de la formation des policiers, mais aussi d'intervenants sociaux. Donc j'utilise les outils qui me sont donnés très gracieusement par Hans Peckard, et notamment les différentes interviews de djihadistes, parce que j'y trouve là non seulement un contre-message, mais aussi une histoire, et comme l'a dit mon collègue Gert, une histoire qui parle aux jeunes et qui peut parler aux autres. Alors les méthodes qu'elle applique aussi, que je trouve pertinentes, et puis ces différents outils me permettent de m'adresser à des audiences différentes, que ce soit les policiers ou les travailleurs sociaux, et puis bien sûr les différentes études, les différents livres, mais surtout, je vais y revenir, les présentations et les débats. Alors, en ce qui concerne les interviews des djihadistes, bien, c'est important à la fois pour les professionnels que nous sommes, dans les services de police, mais aussi au sein des services sociaux. Pourquoi? Eh bien, parce que c'est une histoire qui est relatée, et puis aussi, cela nous permet de voir un peu comment se comporte cette personne face à la caméra, comment il s'est comporté aussi sur le champ de bataille par rapport aux renseignements que nous avons, et aussi par rapport à son comportement lors d'interrogatoires policiers. Et tout ça peut nous donner aussi des informations sur la personne en elle-même. Alors, au sein des services sociaux, eh bien, cette information, cette narration du vécu de ces personnes est aussi intéressante. Ça permet aux travailleurs sociaux qui ne sont pas en contact, comme les services policiers peuvent l'être, avec ces personnes, de mieux comprendre leur parcours, leur trajectoire, et d'ainsi peut-être de mettre en place certains outils pour les aider. Alors, en ce qui concerne la jeunesse, Anne vous l'a expliqué, je ne reviens pas dessus, puisqu'ils tweetent, ils sont sur Facebook, ils chattent, etc. Donc, aller chercher ces informations et tomber sur ces contre-narrations, c'est intéressant pour nous. Et ça peut être intéressant pour eux. Alors, les autres personnes qui sont visées ici, bien, ce sont les familles, ce sont les professeurs, ce sont toutes les personnes qui peuvent utiliser ces outils et qui peuvent ainsi s'impliquer dans le contre-terrorisme. Alors, en ce qui concerne les méthodes, eh bien, moi, j'adore particulièrement le fait qu'on utilise la communication pour combattre le terrorisme. En fait, on utilise les mêmes armes. C'est un peu fort à dire, les mêmes outils. Et ça, c'est intéressant parce qu'effectivement, ça parle aux jeunes. Alors, évidemment, le slogan « To break the ISIS brand », c'est super bien trouvé. En français, ça sonne un peu moins bien. Mais effectivement, ça parle et on comprend. Et c'est facile comme message à transmettre. Alors, ces interviews eh bien, sont accompagnées toujours d'outils pour lancer un débat. Et ça, c'est intéressant aussi. Les outils, ce sont simplement parfois les questions. Que ressentez-vous? Que ressentez-vous quand vous entendez cette personne? Pensez-vous qu'il dit la vérité? Et ces questions, à la fois, parlent aux jeunes, mais parlent aussi aux policiers qui ont peut-être rencontré la personne dans d'autres conditions. Et ces questions parlent aussi aux intervenants sociaux. Alors, je vous l'ai dit, les supports permettent de s'adresser à différents publics, et c'est ce que j'apprécie justement, puisque, je vous l'ai dit, je suis formatrice COPRA pour les policiers depuis de nombreuses années, et j'utilise maintenant les vidéos d'Anne Specard. Qu'est-ce que c'est que le COPRA? C'est une formation qui utilise des indicateurs de radicalisation pour expliquer aux policiers comment fonctionner, comment transmettre l'information, etc. Et puis, j'ai développé aussi une formation qui ressemble à cette formation COPRA, mais pour les travailleurs sociaux, donc avec une approche différente, puisque l'approche de l'un et l'autre est sensiblement différente. Mais le but, je vous le rappelle, c'est quand même assurer la chaîne de sécurité et assurer la sécurité ici en Belgique. Alors, en ce qui concerne les étudiants, eh bien, je ne m'adresse pas à des étudiants, mais je sais que cet outil peut être aussi utilisé par les enseignants, et c'est vraiment très important et très utile puisque c'est accompagné d'outils qui permettent de lancer le débat. Alors, à titre d'exemple, j'utilise plusieurs vidéos en fonction de l'audience, que ce soit des vidéos de Belges. La plupart du temps, j'essaye d'utiliser des vidéos de Belges, mais aussi de vidéos de personnes qui viennent de pays étrangers. Parce que c'est ce qui est intéressant aussi dans le travail d'Anne Specard, c'est qu'elle nous donne à la fois des interviews de Belges, mais aussi d'étrangers. Et parfois, l'information est un petit peu différente. Alors, excusez-moi, une vidéo qui est intéressante, surtout maintenant puisqu'on parle pas mal de rapatriement, c'est la vidéo concernant les mineurs qui ont été happés dans ce cercle infernal du djihadisme. Alors, pour terminer, les livres, bien sûr, les conférences, les débats. Alors je voudrais insister sur une chose, c'est que Anne m'a permis, grâce à ces conférences et à ces débats, de rencontrer des personnes. Parce que j'estime que le face-à-face avec des collaborateurs, avec des partenaires, est primordial. C'est comme cela qu'on arrive à faire avancer les choses, que ce soit au sein des task forces locales ou au sein des cellules de sécurité intégrales locales. C'est en permettant aux gens de se connaître, de se reconnaître et de s'apprécier qui leur permettra de travailler en toute confiance et d'établir des liens et des interactions. Et bien voilà. J'espère que je vois qu'on nous a encore amené pas mal de choses sur la table. Je vous propose de continuer le repas, mais il y a, si je ne m'abuse, une petite vidéo. Donc c'est la vidéo d'un jeune liégeois qui n'est pas parti du tout, qui avait l'intention de partir, mais qui est resté quand même ici. Et pour l'instant, c'est un jeune homme qui est vraiment en train d'avoir une trajectoire tout à fait positive et tout à fait intéressante. Donc voilà, tout n'est pas perdu, le désengagement est tout à fait possible. C'est moi qui lance ? Oui.
Quand j'étais petit, je sentais qu'il y avait un créateur, qu'il y avait quelque chose au-dessus de moi, ça c'est certain. Et je savais que dans l'islam, il y avait quelque chose qu'il n'y avait pas dans les autres religions. J'ai grandi ici à Liège, en Belgique. Mon père est algérien, ma mère est belge. Mon père est athéiste et ma mère aussi. Voilà. Dans toute la famille, en fait, ils ne croient pas en Dieu. J'ai beaucoup d'amis qui étaient musulmans. Ça n'a pas été intentionnel, c'est venu quelqu'un d'autodidacte, des cours religieux, oui, à la mosquée. Je m'ennuyais beaucoup à l'école. Je n'aimais pas rester assis et écouter. Je n'étais pas captivé par les cours. J'étais accusé de prosélytisme. C'était pas de ma faute si moi je parle à une personne et qu'après il y en a 20 qui viennent m'écouter. J'ai décidé de quitter parce que je savais que si je restais dans cet établissement ou même dans un autre, je savais que les choses allaient empirer. C'était plus possible pour moi, alors j'ai décidé justement d'apprendre tout seul. J'étais en conflit par rapport à ma conversion avec mes parents. S'habiller de la manière que Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nous a ordonné et que le prophète Mohammed nous a enseigné. J'avais un peu plus de barbe que maintenant. Les gens ont peur de l'inconnu. Quand on voit un changement dit radical, on se pose des questions, on a peur. Ça a commencé, le conflit syrien, quand on a commencé à voir des vidéos sur Internet qui étaient partagées du massacre qui se passait là-bas, de par l'injustice commise par Bachar el-Assad envers son peuple. Voilà, juste, regarde ça, t'as vu ce qui s'est passé, tu as vu ceci, cela. Voilà. On était triste, on était attristés de ce qui se passait. Jabhat al-Nusra, quand ce mouvement-là s'est créé, a commencé à faire de petites vidéos entre guillemets, de propagande, on a commencé à se dire, ouais, il faudrait peut-être faire quelque chose. Moi, je pensais juste pour aller les aider. Le cheminement de tout ça, voilà, tu récoltes, tu essayes de récolter de l'argent pour pouvoir partir. Comment on peut penser, les gens font vite le lien avec les 73 vierges qu'on aura au paradis, mais en fait, c'est pas du tout ça qu'on cherche réellement, c'est juste la satisfaction du Créateur et rien d'autre. On n'a pas vraiment eu le choix de rentrer parce qu'à ce moment-là, le père de mon ami est venu nous chercher. J'avais aucune haine envers qui que ce soit, mis à part le régime de Bachar el-Assad. Il y a une enquête qui s'est faite pendant 2 années. 2 années, j'ai été suivi sur Facebook, en fait, parce que je partageais des vidéos, etc. Mais en fait, vu qu'il n'avait aucune charge contre moi, il n'avait aucune preuve comme quoi, tout ce qui m'en collait, en fait, c'est juste incitation à la haine. incitation à la haine à cause de mon Facebook. Le résultat est que j'ai été condamné à 2 ans avec sursis sur un suivi probatoire de 5 années. Mon certificat de bonne vie et mœurs, dans mon casier, il est marqué terrorisme en grand. Avec le recul, l'expérience, et aussi avec ce qui s'est passé là-bas, il y a une grande dissension parmi les groupes qui étaient là-bas. C'était plus possible. Daesh a, entre guillemets, profité de l'occasion pour monter en puissance. Et c'est là qu'une des fitnas a commencé. Avant, je pensais que c'était très bien, parce qu'ils rejetaient toute alliance qui était contraire à l'islam. Ils voulaient juste imposer l'islam. Maintenant, les conflits politiques, tout le monde puisse pratiquer sa liberté de culte comme il l'entend. Non seulement pour les musulmans, mais aussi pour les juifs, les chrétiens. Parce que je ne peux pas prier au travail comme je voudrais. Si je porte une barbe, directement, il y a les préjugés. Si par exemple, mon épouse a le voile, directement, elle va être discriminée. J'avais demandé pour pouvoir faire ma prière, puisque tout le monde sortait pour pouvoir aller fumer une cigarette. Alors pourquoi pas moi sortir pour pouvoir aller faire ma prière qui ne va durer même pas 5 minutes. Je ne suis pas dans une terre d'islam, voilà, je suis dans entre guillemets, dans un pays dit démocratique. Entre guillemets, cette confiance de l'autre, il n'y a pas, bien sûr, du racisme et de la discrimination, il y en aura partout et il y en aura toujours. Parce que quand ça a commencé, la coalition, etc., ils se sont donné à cœur joie de bombarder les innocents en Syrie. Daesh, qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait? Ils ont averti. Ils ont dit, écoutez, arrêtez de nous bombarder, sinon vous allez avoir des répercussions, ce qui est normal. Et après, voilà, c'est ce qui s'est passé. On appelle ça la loi du talion, et c'est compréhensible. C'est triste, hein? Je suis contre le fait de regarder encore ce genre de vidéos parce que justement ça joue sur l'émotionnel, de ne pas regarder ce genre de vidéos.
Well, and that's a pretty challenging video. Personally, I'm convinced. George is not here, is he? I hope not. Now we're going to hear from Miriam Parr, who joined the police force in The Hague in 1999, another one who started in Maternelle. As a behavioral scientist, she advises employees of the police, the City Council, and the Ministry of Justice on psychological issues in the field of police matters. Miriam has lectured on police issues both on a national and an international level. She co-trained the police in Falkirk, Scotland, and gave lectures at the New York City Police Department Police Academy. Actually, I wrote a book about the New York City Police Department's counterterrorism operations 10 years ago. And they were struggling with all the ideas that are being presented here today. They didn't have the nuances, they just had general approaches, which eventually got them into a lot of trouble for supposed or real surveillance of the Muslim communities. And I think that maybe in the panel we can talk a little bit about pushback in terms of civil and human rights against counterterrorism operations. But that's not what Miriam is going to be talking about. And I would welcome her to come up right now.
I'm awfully clumsy, so where do I have to push? It is already there, the green one. Okay, excellent. Hi, Anne. Hi, everybody. Thanks for welcoming me here. I'm going to tell you something today about the topics Anne Speckhard mentioned in her lengthy invitation. So the reasons why Westerners join terrorist groups, dealing with returning foreign fighters, female roles in violent groups, And the ICSVE made of all those topics counter-narratives, so I will end my speech with how do the Netherlands look upon counter-narratives. Green? No? Yeah. Let me introduce you to Jordi, a Dutch male returnee. Jordi fell in love with a Moroccan girl. Because of her, he converted to Islam. Eager to become sound enough in his faith, he frequented more and more often the mosques in The Hague. He started to grow a beard and wear a jalaba. Gone were the days that he was a bullied teenager with a silly part-time job in a silly supermarket. Gone were the days that he participated in the television show The X Factor. He started watching YouTube films and discussed at great length the atrocities committed by Assad's government. In 2013, he travels with his wife and young kid to help his brothers and sisters in Syria, a year before ISIS established the caliphate. After 10 weeks, he returns to the Netherlands. The reason? According to him, his passport was about to expire. This is Laura, a Dutch female returnee. Laura came from a troubled background. Her parents divorced when she was very young. She felt neglected because all her parents' attention was focused on her severely ill brother. Laura was bullied at school. Desperate for love and protection, she fell in love with the wrong guys. She ended up becoming a victim of lover boys. By her own account, she regained some self-esteem at the age of 15 when she joined a group of Muslim people and started wearing a veil. Via dating site muslima.com, she meets Ibrahim, a Muslim. She marries him aged 17. Right away, she becomes the victim of domestic violence. Social workers closely monitor the family, but Laura is driven by fear that her child would be taken into care. In September 2015, she traveled with husband and young kid through Turkey via Iraq to Syria. In her own words, she was told she would go on a holiday and eventually help refugees. It turned out that they were going to join ISIS. Laura emphasizes that she didn't want to go to Syria, she was forced. Life in the caliphate turned out hell. She's able to contact her father by phone, and in 2016, her father paid 2,000 euros to a German smuggler to help her come home. Since the Dutch government, that's our policy, doesn't help returning people from IS. Via Kurdistan, she comes back to the Netherlands. The next topic, how are we dealing in the Netherlands with returning foreign fighters? People returning from IS or other terrorist groups form a potential threat for the national security in the Netherlands. Therefore, our Ministry of Justice has taken several measures. The first one, to prevent people from joining ISIS, local and national authorities work closely together in a so-called multidisciplinary case management in the Safety House. The Safety House is a network cooperation between criminal law, healthcare, welfare, and local authorities. The police force, beat officers and their chefs, public prosecutors, municipality, school, and probation officers weigh interventions such as declaring passports expired, issuing European arrest warrants, imposing measures of child protection. And in the event that people have joined ISIS and are returning to the Netherlands, the police force and the public prosecutor start an investigation. At their arrival in the Netherlands, returnees are held for questioning and remand in custody for 60 till 90 days in a Dutch prison in Vught, with a capital G. It's a prison with a terrorist unit. In this prison, there are imams working and psychologists specialized in trauma treatment. Simultaneously, the returnees are being discussed in the Safety House I just mentioned. And this time the interventions are prosecution, area ban, and de-radicalization trajectories. So both criminal measures as measures in the administrative law are being discussed in the Safety House. But reality is always more complex and difficult. Other countries are dealing in their own ways with international information sharing. So it's, among others, very difficult to get a court ruling from abroad. The moment we get the sentencing, it has to be translated in Dutch, and it has to be examined under Dutch law. Also, it's very difficult to find out what the returnee has done during the time with ISIS, since there's no recognized authority to ask the question to. Besides that, you don't know what the returnee has been convicted of abroad, only vaguely terrorism-related facts. For the Dutch public prosecutor, the dilemma is whether they are still entitled to initiate criminal proceedings because of the prohibition of double jeopardy. This is the Vught prison. Then we go to the female roles. In the Netherlands, every year, 500 Dutch women convert to Islam. The attraction lies in practical tools Islam is offering to integrate spirituality in daily life. The women most happy within their new religion are those whose conversion has been a gradual process. These women are uncomfortable with the behavior of their sisters who took the express route to conversion. Whilst they are busy with a spiritual journey, they are being confronted with women who trade their licentious lives within months for Islam. Who are these in no time converted Muslimas? Research shows that most of them come from troubled backgrounds, have low educational levels, were prone to licentiousness, and often felt discriminated. Does this mean that young women who converted more or less out of the blue and are now fanatically practicing Islam will all go to Syria? No, of course not. But it is striking to see that a lot of women who left for Syria only very shortly before converted to Islam. The virtual world is partly to blame. Young converts have in general no exact knowledge of Islam and have no network to teach them. They try to find the answers on the internet and turn to radical sites. Since 2012, at least 80 women have traveled from the Netherlands to Syria and Iraq. This is 25% of our total amount. Until recently, women had specific roles under ISIS. They had to take care of the fighters and provide them with lots of children. At this moment, women play more active and violent roles, and they form a bigger threat. Now, ISIS is losing territory more and more. Women are trying to return. These women cannot be compared to the ones who returned before 2017. The women still there are there for over 3 years, and they have been exposed much longer to the propagating of extremist ideas and violence. We have to bear in mind that a substantial part of these women will still embrace those ideas after returning to the Netherlands. And then I haven't even mentioned the effect on their children. Our Dutch approach to counter-narratives. In 2017, end of 2017, the Ministry of Justice came with a Dutch study. The main question that has been investigated is to what extent it is possible to use counter-narrative programs via social media to de-radicalize individuals or prevent violent extremism. A central outcome is that to the extent that people have become more radical and strongly identify with an extremist ideology or group, they are less likely to be persuaded by counter-narrative campaigns. In terms of sources, it is clear that they need to be perceived as credible by the audience in order to function as trustworthy messengers. Commonly mentioned candidates are former extremists, like Anne is using, victims of violence, peers, family, as well as key members of communities. The potential of the government to serve as a credible source might be limited, although the government can play a role in facilitating making good evaluations and monitoring it. What can I say about the police? And I speak for the police in The Hague and counter-narratives. The police are an executive organization that works on behalf of the Ministry of Justice. According to Article 3 of the Dutch Police Act, we offer help to those in need. Therefore, it is our social responsibility to stop radicalization. Even though the possible success of counter-narrative films is not yet evidence-based, the existence of the films is a fact. So one way or another, the police will be confronted with them. Even though the police won't play an active role in offering the films, police officers have to know that such films exist and preferably know their content. Therefore, we mention the counter-narratives films from Anne during our national terrorism training, and we have given on quite a few occasions the floor to Anne and both Adrian. She has had lengthy discussions with Dutch scientists, both advocates and opponents of the theme. One of those opponents, although he's a big fan of Anne, aren't we all, is Bob de Graaf, Professor Intelligence and Security Studies. He states that counter-narratives are too small scale. They lose out to media coverage. Creating social opportunities for youngsters is, according to him, a better alternative. He's a keen advocate of reintroduction of military or social service. You have to give youngsters the idea that they are needed so they can become new heroes. Don't give them a counter-narrative. It will only emphasize what they are thinking. Give them an alternative narrative with a whole new script in which they can excel, or, if you wish, radicalize in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. And we have had some quite heated debates in the Netherlands about should we use counter-narratives or not. And there are good arguments against. If you want to read a paper about that, we just published one. It's on our website, and it's in Homeland Security today. And it took some of the arguments that we had in the Netherlands, and we put our point of view, and we also named the other points of view. I want to show you one more video, and then we're going to open to a panel. And this video, can you turn the camera away when we're not going to live stream it, I'm sorry. And I have to ask you please not to take pictures of it, because we're going to show this little girl and her face. She's Belgian, she's in Camp Rouge, and she wants to come home. And I want you to see it. It's not a counter-narrative, it's just something for you to think about when you're debating in your country, should we let these kids and their mothers come home? And while you are absolutely right, they spent longer time, there's also some that spent a long time trying to escape. There's women like Salma, that's not her real name, who her father was killed by ISIS in front of her eyes. I don't think she's ever going back to ISIS. I might be wrong, but I'd find it hard to believe. But yeah, the longer they stayed, the more dangerous they might be, or the more traumatized they might be. But just listen to this little girl. It's very short, and you make your own mind up about whether she should be allowed to come home. And then we'll have the panel. Oh, can you start it? Yeah.
Et tu es quoi? Tu es belge? Oui? Tu es vraiment belge? C'est vrai? Tu es belge? Voilà docteur Anne qui est là. C'est un docteur. Et c'est maman qui est là. Oui. Et qu'est-ce que tu veux de la Belgique? Tu veux aller à l'école? Tu veux aller à l'école en Belgique? Dis-moi.
Oui.
Oui. Est-ce que tu vas à l'école ici un peu?
Non.
Tu ne vas pas à l'école ici? Elle va à l'école ici?
Non, parce qu'il n'y a pas vraiment ni d'apprentissage, ni de discipline.
Ah, ok, ok. Mais tu ne fais pas la musique? Ils font la musique ici un peu. Ils ont 1 heure de musique. Tu fais ça?
Oui.
Tu ne sais pas faire ça? Hein? Tu sais chanter un peu en français? Aucune chanson? Hein?
Bah, le furet, quand même.
Hein? Frère Jacques ou un truc comme ça, tu ne connais pas? C'est la faute à maman. Okay.
Are you a little terrorist?
Hein?
Ask her if she's a little terrorist.
Est-ce que tu es une fille dangereuse? Tu es sage? Tu es sage?
Oh my God.
Tu es vraiment sage?
Non.
Tu n'es pas sage? Qu'est-ce que tu fais dans le camp? Tu jettes les cailloux?
Non.
Tu parles arabe un peu? تحكي عربي?
Un petit peu.
Un petit peu, un petit peu. Qu'est-ce que tu es belle, vraiment, qu'est-ce que tu es... Tu veux rentrer en Belgique? Tu veux aller en Belgique? Oui, tu veux aller en Belgique? Oui? Oh, bon, c'est vrai ça? D'accord, on va essayer. Allez, tu dis bonjour à toute la Belgique? Dis bonjour pour la Belgique.
Bonjour.
À qui? Bonjour.
Bonjour.
La Belgique.
Bonjour la Belgique.
Bravo, bravo.
Hello? Ah, voilà. Hello? Hello, hello? Yep, okay. So, all right, I don't know how long we have for this. Supposedly, we're supposed to end. So we have about 15 minutes. I guess we'll make it very quick. I think there's a key issue that came up in the last discussion, and I don't think it's one thing or the other. But while you can have counter-narratives, you can say the ISIS narrative is lousy. At some point, you have to say, here's a narrative that's good, which is what I think Miriam was saying. But it strikes me as so much the way academia and some bureaucracies work, that it's talked about as an either-or thing. In fact, you can say the ISIS narrative is lousy, and you can find narratives that people can join. I'm not sure sports and that kind of thing is the best thing, because there are a number of studies that show that a lot of people who engaged in terrorism pre-ISIS got to know each other on soccer teams and basketball teams. So I'm not sure that sports is necessarily the way to go. But the idea of looking for another narrative that's a positive narrative is, I think, hugely important. And when you look at the heroic narratives, heroic, entre guillemets, narratives of ISIS, you think, what can you replace those with? I'm not sure we have an answer to that. But any thoughts on that, I'd be glad to hear, starting with Anne.
Oh, jeez. Well, absolutely we need alternative narratives, and I also agree it's not either or, it's both. And the government needs to be speaking to you in a way and offering you opportunities so that you're happy and that you don't resonate to a terrorist call. But we have to understand that if we just make a message of, you live in the EU and life is good, if your life isn't good, and if on a daily basis you're facing discrimination and marginalization, you're going to completely dismiss that message. But if you're invited to something that is good, and you feel excited about it, then you may dismiss the ISIS message. So it is both.
I agree.
The other quick question I have, and then I'll open up the floor, is we've been talking about people coming back from Syria and Iraq who've been in ISIS. But I know in France there's a major problem looming on the horizon, and that is a lot of people who wanted to join ISIS, who were jihadists, who were jailed because they were jihadists, have been in jail with other jihadists, and now they're being released. A lot of them are being released. What do you do about them? They have not had 4 years or 6 years of counter-narrative. They've had 4 or 6 years of strengthening the narrative within the prisons of Europe. What do you do about them?
Yeah, certainly not to forget about them, because a lot of them are, if they're not end of punishment and they get free conditionally, then there's something you can do. And the judges more and more now impose on them some sort of DRAT trajectory, which gets more and more streamlined, and that's a good thing. And on the other hand, those who are who have served their prison sentence, there's no conditions anymore, so they get free. They return to their home, and then it's up in Belgium to the local task force and the local integrated security cell, which was Beatrice who explained that to you, to do the follow-up. And so even if they are end of penalty, when we think that there is still a threat stemming from these persons, and they are not entirely de-radicalized, which is quite often the case if they come out of prison. It's not the best place to de-radicalize people. Then there will be a follow-up, and that can be a follow-up that is more security-oriented. When the person is still heavily involved in extremist contacts and ideology, or if the person is willing to cooperate with the authorities and is reducing his or her contacts with the extremist scene, we think of alternative measures, and then it will be more social positive measures. And that can go from helping them to find a job, job training program, etc. There can be assistance given to the family, etc., etc. A lot of social preventive work can then be done. But those persons and ex-prisoners will be followed upon and many of them for many years. It's the best what we can do. The problem is you cannot impose somebody to de-radicalize, and you can have the best programs in the world, you can have whatever you want, but there is no whitewashing machine. You cannot have people come out of prisons and then we put them in a de-rad program and they will come out whitewashed, clean, and we don't have to worry about them anymore. It's really case-by-case based business, and you have to organize yourself that you can follow them each individually and do it and be ready for the long run.
En ce qui concerne les mesures de prévention du radicalisme et du terrorisme, effectivement, nous devons tous nous tenir par la main, que ce soit au niveau policier, judiciaire ou social. Ce n'est que de cette façon que nous arriverons à lutter contre le terrorisme et permettre à des jeunes, mais aussi des moins jeunes, à se désengager. Je vous ai parlé tout à l'heure du suivi policier ou du suivi social. Je crois qu'il y a encore du travail à faire en cette matière, que ce soit tant de la part des services policiers que sociaux. Il nous faut encore des outils, surtout au niveau social, pour pouvoir vraiment permettre à ces personnes qui sont radicalisées de se désengager, mais aussi des outils qui permettraient de mieux travailler en matière de prévention. Mais je suis vraiment je ne trouve pas mes mots, mais je veux dire qu'en Belgique, on arrive vraiment à développer beaucoup de moyens maintenant et d'outils en matière de lutte contre le radicalisme et en matière de prévention.
Just a small thing to add to what Beatrice said. Importance now and the challenge in Belgium is indeed the social sector. To convince them that they need to share at least a minimum of information, give feedback to the security side. Even if the mechanisms exist, you may have the best laws to cover them so that they can break the professional secrecy that is very characteristic for their work. They don't have to tell us the details. We don't have to know everything from that is going on between the professional and the persons they take care of. But at least we do have to know if a person is involved in some kind of program and how she or he is evolving. Is it going in a positive way and in a negative way? We need to have feedback from psychiatric institutions, from closed youth institutions, etc. And that's still a challenge to go. A lot of it's confidence building, so I think it will take just time, more than a legal framework to achieve that.
Can I say something on this? Sorry, I can't resist this. We're preparing, Dr. Ardian and I, to go to Kazakhstan after we leave Belgium for a UN ODC conference where they're asking exactly these questions. So we were sitting and thinking about it. Also this summer we were in Kosovo and met with one of the ISIS guys that we had interviewed in prison, and he's now released. And we interviewed him again and had a nice dinner together, but during the dinner he told us that he had radicalized further in prison, that he was able to get access to the writings of Makdisi and Ibrahim Millet, and that they studied it in Albanian language in prison. So, you know, how is he getting access to this? He also said that he wished us to get beheaded on our next trip to Syria. So, and he said that his duty was, and every duty of Muslims that are following the true Islam, according to him, was to kill everyone else except for Muslims. So I was glad that Ardian was sitting between the two of us, and is also a big, strong man that I know would protect me. And I did ask him, do you have a knife at his plate? Because, you know, it's a bit frightening to listen to this. But this is a guy just released from prison, and in a prison that says it has a program, but it didn't reach him. And the other thing that I want to point out is we've had cases in France where serious jihadists are in prison for a longer time, and a young man comes in on some minor criminal charge. He's scared in prison. He finds a protector, and this guy quickly radicalizes him. And by the time he goes out on his short sentence, he has a whole group that this ISIS guy or Al-Qaeda guy or whatever he happens to be has set up for him. So when you go out, I have follow-up for you. So what I want to convince you is if we don't do it, ISIS will do it. And they are service providers. And they have charismatic recruiters. So we, sorry, it's true. And so we have to act like them to a certain extent and find out what's working for them. If it's working for them, it might work for us. Maybe we have to provide protection, comfort, fellowship, follow-up inside prison. We also have to really cultivate informers. And we have to think about prevention in prison. And that's somewhere I would also love our videos to be used, or, you know, whatever tool works. I don't care if it's our videos, but we need to be doing prevention because they're doing recruitment.
Well, I think I want to open the floor to questions now, but I think to give an idea just how difficult this job is that everybody's talking about, I think we need to remember how close several terrorists that created huge damage in Europe were to the police. They were followed by the police. Mohammed Merah was a classic example. They were followed by the police. They were known by the police. They were in touch with the police. They'd been in prison. They had records. They had fiches. They had everything, and they still did what they did. So you can follow them, but we don't have even one cop for every terrorist. We have one cop for every God knows how many. And that's if you can be sure that they are terrorists. So with that happy thought, I'll open the floor to questions. Did you have a question? Yes. Do we have a microphone for the audience? Yeah, sure.
Merci, monsieur. Je m'exprime en français, mais je suppose que Pascal ou Abit pourront traduire en anglais. Je suis, comme tout le monde ici, terrorisé par les images et par les narrations qu'on nous a faites. Mais pour moi, personnellement, qui je suis un homme politique, je suis plus terrorisé encore qu'on n'aborde pas le vrai sujet du terrorisme, à savoir l'armement. L'ambassadeur du Qatar est vraiment, parce qu'il est là et qu'il s'est exprimé, mais je n'ai pas de problème avec lui, ni avec personne d'ailleurs. Il a dit on a débloqué 5 millions de dollars pour l'instruction. J'aimerais bien savoir ce que le Qatar a dépensé comme argent pour acheter des armements américains. Quand j'entends Donald Trump, pour qui je n'ai que du mépris, quand j'entends qu'il dit que parce qu'on a tué un journaliste d'une façon barbare, ça ne justifie pas de rompre les accords et le dialogue pour ne pas laisser échapper à marché de 100 milliards de dollars d'armement vers les Chinois ou vers les Russes. Alors, le terrorisme religieux, on le connaît depuis la nuit des temps. Nous, les Européens, nos ancêtres, nos ancêtres, on a organisé des caravanes expéditives terroristes lorsqu'on a fait les croisades il y a 1000 ans. Et c'était pour aller, soi-disant, aussi faire payer les autres infidèles parce qu'ils étaient dans l'autre secteur. Je crois que malgré tout le travail formidable que vous faites d'information, si à un moment donné, on n'intervient pas politiquement par tous les moyens que nous, les responsables politiques, avons à notre disposition, le dernier achat des F-35 par la Belgique aux Américains plutôt que d'acheter les Rafales, c'était un marché simplement pour faire plaisir à Donald Trump. Et vous comprenez combien moi je suis irrité par cela. Mais si on ne dit pas à un moment donné, on continue la lutte des cellules parce qu'il faut arrêter les attentats, mais si on ne limite pas et qu'on ne contrôle pas les armements, le coût de l'armement américain pour son économie justifie tous les terrorismes du monde. Arrêtez de vendre des armes, vous n'aurez plus de terroristes.
I'm not sure. What he was saying is basically that the final remark was that the cost of American arms justifies terrorism all around the world. Okay, that's sort of a kind of an Al-Qaeda kind of argument, excuse me. But it's taking one thing and making it equal to another. I think what we're talking about now is dealing at the grassroots level with people who are attracted by the idea of terrorism in the terms that we were discussing. If we want to discuss the idiocy of American policy in support of arms sales, that's another question. And I agree, it's crazy, it's insane. We just published at the Daily Beast an excellent story about how arms get to South Sudan, where the bullets come from, very detailed. How they go from Europe to Uganda, old Soviet weapons, all of that stuff goes on. We get that. But you can work against that, and you are still not going to affect the minds of people who are going to go get hydrogen peroxide from the beauty parlor and make TATP explosives and blow themselves and other people up. So it's not just a question of arms, if I may respond to that. Another question? Back here? Well, wait, oh, okay. Well, there's another guy right behind you, so he's next.
I will speak also in French. It's easier for me, if you don't mind.
Oh, but your English is so good.
D'abord, je voudrais vous remercier vraiment pour la qualité de cette conférence. C'est très précieux, c'est très important. Merci à Hans Kempart, merci à Amit Sebali. Je suis moi-même député fédéral et belge, et j'ai été très impliqué dans la commission d'enquête sur les attentats terroristes ici en Belgique, et donc je suis ces questions de terrorisme depuis longtemps. J'ai eu l'occasion, comme vous d'ailleurs, d'aller en Syrie du Nord récemment et de voir la petite Lina et de voir effectivement, de l'interroger. Effectivement, cela reste très préoccupant de la savoir là-bas dans le nord de la Syrie. Et merci à tous les intervenants. Et j'aurais voulu vous poser une question sur... il me semble qu'il y a un élément qu'on ne traite pas suffisamment, et qui est que ce terrorisme n'est pas né de nulle part. Il est né effectivement dans un contexte idéologique d'islam radical, qui est là depuis plusieurs décennies. Et je pense que M. Verkotteren de l'OCAM en a parlé notamment sur... cet islam qui continue à être extrêmement présent dans nos sociétés, avec une volonté de diviser nos sociétés, avec une volonté de ségrégation, avec une volonté de radicalisation des communautés, d'instrumentalisation des communautés musulmanes. Et donc, au-delà du contre-discours, au-delà de l'interdiction de discours prêchant la violence, la haine et le terrorisme, je pense qu'il y a aussi tout un travail vraiment qui doit être fait au niveau européen, qui a été entamé depuis quelques années au niveau belge. Et il y a eu un rapport de l'OCAM notamment extrêmement intéressant il y a une année qui a montré le parallélisme qui existait entre l'islam radical et le terrorisme, donc la continuité qu'il pouvait y avoir entre ces deux problèmes, et donc j'ai l'impression qu'on ne travaille pas assez là-dessus. Il vient d'y avoir de nouveau un rapport de la Sûreté de l'État en Belgique disant que le salafisme continue à progresser en Belgique, et cela continue à être une menace sur nos sociétés, et ça continue à inspirer les terroristes. Et donc, et quand je parle de cela, j'ai toujours l'impression que cela évoque insuffisamment de réactions et de propositions au niveau politique, et notamment qu'il n'y a pas que de coordination au niveau européen là-dessus, parce qu'il n'y a pas que la Belgique qui est sous cette menace. Il n'y a d'ailleurs pas que le salafisme qui pose un problème comme islam radical, mais donc il y a cette influence et cette volonté de la part de puissances étrangères de financer un islam radical qui lui-même peut éventuellement déboucher sur des actions violentes et sur du terrorisme. Et je trouve que nous ne sommes pas du tout suffisamment équipés aujourd'hui par rapport à ce discours-là, qui n'est pas un discours de terrorisme, mais qui est un discours de ségrégation, de renfermement sur soi-même, d'exclusion et de haine de l'autre, finalement, à travers que ce soit un discours qu'on peut trouver dans des mosquées, dans des bibliothèques, dans des manuels, dans des écoles aujourd'hui. Et donc je trouve que c'est véritablement aussi une urgence pour nos sociétés.
Yeah, I will try to answer a little, though, yes, you said yourself, I already evoked it in my speech. There is indeed a problem of religious, and I said extremism, not Islam in our societies, because we should make a difference between the traditional, normal forms of belief, whether they are Islam or not, who have their place in our societies, and our societies also are, I think, more and more ready to accept these normal, these religious forms that are not extremist. So that is not. I was not talking about Islam in general, of course. But as you rightfully pointed out, there is a problem in our country, in many European countries, and throughout the world, Africa, wherever you get it, with a continuous stream of religious extremism that seems to be is financed by certain countries in the Middle East, in the Gulf. We don't have to hide the names if you want, but it is. It's a pity that Gilles de Kerkhoven already left, because he could have told you much more about the initiatives that are ongoing in our country, national level, but also in European level. There is now a lot of initiatives being taken on the level of the EU, the countries themselves. A lot of awareness building is going on. And Gilles himself, I think he has brought it forward everywhere he goes, on many fora. And he's also in favor, and I think we as well as Belgians, we should be open to them, frank dialogue, and explain them that we cannot permit any form of extremism to be spread through religion. That's simply not possible and not acceptable. Every segregation, hatred against other believers, Muslim believers, against all forms of anti-Semitism, etc., they have no place in religious textbooks, and this should stop. We have to really send clear and sound messages to these countries, and I think the best is to go in dialogue with them and to tell them that, well, what we find in the textbooks that are still being spread and throughout the whole throughout our country, throughout many countries, is simply not acceptable for a democratic society. It is diametrically opposed to the values of our society, and it should stop. Point. How? I think it's a long process, but I think it's political, it's national, it's European, it is even worldwide, I would say. It needs awareness building. And then it's also, I think we are now in that phase that we are thinking of what to do, how can we tackle it. In Belgium there is initiatives being taken, the Grand Mosque, etc. It's not to Occam, of course, to do that, but our role is to inform about possible threats that come from these messages. And I think that is the role we have done well so far.
Thank you so much for your comment, both of you. And one thing I'd like to say is sometimes our politicians find it advantageous to use these issues, and they are responsible for further polarizing. Like in our country, yeah, I can name names. We started referring to Muslim extremism instead of extremism in general, and actually most of the extremist acts in the US are carried out by the far right. And you know the problems that we have. And everywhere we've seen that politicians can benefit from stirring the pot this way. And the other things with arms sales, I'm in agreement with Chris, but I also want to say all of our countries had a really hard time figuring out how do we support the uprising in Syria, who are our partners, who can we arm, and should we arm them? And there's been a lot of regrets. We've had American arms end up in the hands of ISIS. I just read an article about Netherlands that they discovered the same. And every country has had these issues of, how do we help for justice without making the problem even worse?
Oui, Monsieur d'Allemagne, vous parliez tout à l'heure de l'instrumentalisation de la communauté musulmane. Moi, je vous parlerai aussi de polarisation, mais aussi de repli communautaire. Et nous assistons effectivement dans différentes provinces, mais notamment la province de Liège, à certains replis communautaires avec un enseignement à domicile. L'enseignement à domicile en soi ne pose pas de problème, mais celui-là semble en poser problème. Si ce n'est pas à court terme, ce sera à long terme. Avec interdiction pour les enfants d'aller à l'école, avec interdiction pour les jeunes filles, bien sûr, d'aller à l'école ou de sortir de chez elles ou encore de travailler. Et pour moi, là, est-ce que le repli de ce type-là, est-ce que se renfermer, s'enfermer dans une communauté sans avoir de contact avec l'extérieur pose problème? Aujourd'hui, je ne vais pas me poser par rapport à oui ou non, mais je pense que à l'avenir, ça risque peut-être de poser problème. Et là, je pense qu'il y a du travail à faire maintenant en ce qui concerne l'enseignement à domicile, en tout cas une vérification beaucoup plus stricte que ce qu'il existe actuellement, avec, bien sûr, il faudra des conséquences par rapport aux parents ou aux allocations familiales, que sais-je, mais il faut intervenir maintenant.
Yeah, I would just say that it's a couple of quick observations. First of all, we can't talk about Islam. There are lots of different kinds of Islam. One of the characteristics, the core characteristics of the so-called Islamic State is that it is takfiri. If you don't believe in Islam exactly the way it believes in Islam, you're a dead man or woman, as the case may be. Particularly if you're Shia, then you are really a dead person. You're devil dead, yes. The whole thrust, in fact, of the Islamic State is much less anti-Western than it is anti-Persian, anti-Shia. And I think that often goes completely ignored. And it's important to understand that. The other thing that I think, just as a journalist covering these issues for some time in Europe, is that the emphasis is always on actually the very small minority of jihadis. It's true that there has been a lot of Salafi infiltration and even Takfiri infiltration of the banlieue in Paris, and I'm sure here in Belgium and elsewhere. But it's also true that there's been a huge amount of integration of very large Muslim populations. And whenever I've seen in France, particularly under Sarkozy, there was this whole thing about banning the burqa. Well, nobody ever wore burqas in France, but banning the niqab, full-face veils. Okay, so at the time, the renseignements généraux decided there were about 9,000 women in France who wore the niqab. Now, if we believe, of course the numbers are vague in France, but if we believe that there are, say, 6 million Muslims in France, and say 3 million or 2 million are women, to have 9,000 wearing the niqab, that's going to be an issue? Who counted how many of them wear bikinis? Nobody. Nobody. But the emphasis is always on the threat of the extremist. And I think it's hugely misleading. So that's just my humble opinion here. You've seen how humble I am. So any more questions? I think, oh yes, this gentleman who was very patient.
Yeah, I got the mic before him. So, hi everyone. I'm George Shabib. Thank you for inviting me, Anne, and congratulations for this beautiful work you've been doing. I've been following you for a long time, as you know, and it's really great to see everyone praising your job, and I think it's really it's deserved. So my question is actually, I've seen all this video, and you know, the focus on this counter narrative was mostly on trying to explain to everyone. That's the way I understood it, is that to explain to everyone that, you know, where you're going is not real Islam. Real Islam is like what you created even a website called the Real Jihad, right? So you're trying to redirect everyone to real Islam or real jihad. So if this is like what I understand the counter narrative. But my question is, where do our values as Western democracies or liberal democracies, not only Westerns, I mean, there's other countries, not Westerns, that are liberal democracies. So where do our values fit in this counter narratives? So do we have like something to sell? I mean, can we fight this jihadism with our own values, democracy, rules of law, all those things that we, and all those guys that left for Syria, they mostly left from our countries. They were actually born and raised in, and we failed to actually convince them about our values. And so how do, we actually bring back our values, and how do we push our values instead of trying to tell them, okay, the Islam you're going for is not the good one. We should, teach you what is the real Islam. No, my question is, how do we actually push back, and showing them that our values are the good one, and that it's worth actually, believing in our values. That's the first question. And second question, which is subsidiary, is you showed this video, this heartbreaking video about this kid that actually deserved, in my opinion, to come back to Belgium, but that's actually, I understand it's a very difficult debate. So, and my question is, how do, by accepting them or not, or rejecting them actually, not letting them come back to Belgium, how do that fit in our, the values, our values that we want to actually promote, which are actually, forgiveness, or one of them, or like, rules of law, and all those things, how this, debates fit in this counter-narrative about our values. That's, that was my question. It's subsidiary to the first one, basically, but that's it. Thank you.
I'll let Anne answer the second one. If I just might answer the first one myself, I would say, if you want to preach values, you have to live by those values. And we see less and less of that in the leadership of the West these days, particularly in the leadership of the United States. Hey, might as well say it. It's true. It's obvious. We have now a kind of a reverence for strong men who don't believe in any of those values, whether they're in Russia or China or in the White House. And I think that that is a huge issue in the broader counter-narrative. But on the question of the child coming back, Anne?
Well, first I'd like to say we're not trying to talk anybody into any Islam. In fact, we don't consider our program religious, but we do have a sheikh, a scholar, that any of the Islamic issues that come up in the counter-narratives are addressed. So he will tell you, and actually we just had a wonderful interview that we couldn't record with Jermaine Grant. He went to Kenya, he's a UK citizen, went to Kenya to join the jihad. I think he was in Somalia with Al-Shabaab. He couldn't tell us because he was up for his court proceedings. But he told us blah, 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 all the narrative. And I said, I wish Sheikh Ali was here to argue with you, because I can't. And I can tell you, I know you have it wrong here, but I don't know exactly why. So they had a debate by letter, because I gave Sheikh Ali all his takfiri interpretations of Islam, and Sheikh Ali said, and he said the best scholars are the ISIS and Al-Qaeda scholars. And I said, no, the best armed scholars are the ISIS and Al-Qaeda. But the best scholars are people that have actually studied. And Sheikh Ali answered him in the very beginning and said, I studied for 14 years. And that there is in Islam a way that you decide who is a scholar and who is not. And only scholars can give opinions on these things. So your ISIS and Al-Qaeda guys might be super dedicated, but they cannot give you scholarly answers. But there's no right way in any religion, in my opinion. Sorry if that bothers people. There's many opinions. There's many Christianities. There's many Islams. And we're not proposing any of them as an answer, but we are proposing discussion. And our videos have three main themes. ISIS did not function by what most people would define as Islam, so it was un-Islamic. It was highly barbaric, even to the people that joined, and it was corrupt. So they did not live by these high ideals. So I'm an insider, and we want an insider to denounce the group. I don't mean me personally, but as an example, the insider is saying, I've been there. You can learn from me. And we know by psychology that humans learn by the stories of other people. We're a species that has told stories to each other for eons. That's how we learn, from other human stories, from myths, from fables, from real human beings. So we're using real human beings to tell insider stories. We're not trying to sell any kind of Islam. And as far as living by our own values, and you know, our own values say children don't go to prison, right? Well, there are Belgian children in prison. We've seen them. It breaks my heart. I wish he would bring them home.
Yeah, I'm always reminded of those jihadis from Great Britain who were headed off to Syria and ordered on Amazon.com Islam for Dummies, which they did.
Yeah. Well, just some small tools on how to fight back on our values. Yes, but we believe, as OCAM, we're of course not a political player, but we have a department of CVE, countering violent extremism, that thinks about this and gives ideas, and our ideas quite often go in that direction of, well, we have to support. And that is something that we can do. Is you can support the modern Islam scholars who exist in amongst our midst, but who often have no way to get hurt because they are facing a bulwark of propaganda that comes from abroad. What we as governments, and I think, should try to do is to promote them and to give them the necessary space. For instance, by not allowing the official Islamic representations to be dominated only by foreign powers or by countries that have a stake in our country, other countries, but give space to local scholars who have a deep and good knowledge of Islam. I also think of gender. Until so far, it's mainly dominated by men, the Muslim representation. But in my opinion, there's also the half of them are women, but we don't see them in the official representation of Muslim communities. I think there the governments can act and can ask, impose that on them, that also women should be present in the boards and in the Muslim representative institutions. And last but not least is perhaps also, that's not only from Belgium, it is an idea that is growing, but perhaps we should think of promoting Islam science in Europe and make it possible that we have training or that we have university programs for imams here in Europe. Now there is a lack of training or formation, and they have to go abroad where they are taught a version of Islam that is perhaps not always easy to understand for the people here, that is alien, strange. So I think these are possibilities that we try to think of, give more space to the local and scholars who are there, who are moderate and who have a modern vision of Islam. But it's, of course, a difficult debate, and that is beyond the scope of what we do at OCAM.
Listen, I hate to end the party here, but we're 30 minutes over our time. So I think we can probably continue the discussion informally outside, but I think we have to wrap it up here. So I want to thank Anne and all the participants, and I want to thank all of you for coming.